Happy Monday to you, degenerate gamblers. Welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast. I'm your boy, your host, the man behind the camera, your guy Clint. And I cannot wait to break this card down for you today. We are talking UFC 283. We got a big-ass pay-per-view card, the first one of the year, and I am absolutely pumped up. There's so many good fights on this card, and all the bad fights on this card are scrappy as shit. So it's going to be a fun night of fights no matter which way you dice it up. What's up, everybody in the chat? We have got Johnny Odinas, Joshua Flick, the Grateful Dude, Will Martin, UFC podcasting legend in the chat today. Modern day shaman, we've got Joseph Nassenbaum, we've got Jared Curry, DFS by the numbers making his presence known, Justin Villejas. How is everybody doing? Thank you all so much for hanging out with me this evening. As always, do us a favor, big pay-per-view boys and girls, smash the like button. Let's get everybody rolling in here and understand what Pub Sports Radio is doing. We be pubbing. We're coming here 2023. And as is tradition, this is a Jamahal Hill fight week, ladies and gentlemen. That means we've got one guest and one guest only. You may know him as the host of Half the Battle, my guy Dan Levy, member of the Bald Gang. Dan, how you doing?
Doing absolutely phenomenal, man. Thank you for having me on, firstly. You know, it's a special day. It's a special week. I mean, today is a day that we celebrate a legend from where I'm from. You may have heard of him. His name is Martin Luther King. So, you know, happy MLK Day. And then this weekend, we get my favorite up-and-comer, Jamahal Hill, taking on someone that we all respect so much in Glover Teixeira for the belt. So, yeah, I'm just pumped, man. This is truly the best card of the year thus far.
It's great, man. It's great. And happy MLK Day to everybody. Thank you very much for mentioning that. I get all caught up in the fight excitement. And frankly, I forgot today was a holiday because I've been cramming for the show. As you guys may know, I've got my tail between my legs. The Vikings lost. We're out of the playoffs yesterday. It was a little painful, and I just wasn't up to doing the tape study after that last night. So I've been cramming all day today, and I'm completely obsessed and ready to get into this card. What is up, Uncle Weezy saying oi in the chat? And Joshua, my bad, I may have said Flick. Jimmy Flick from last week apparently still on the brain. So my mistake, my friend. Hey, I hope everybody is doing well. Dan, how'd you do last week on the first card of the year?
Oh, I got my ass handed to me. And what's funny about that is the exact same thing happened last year, first event of the year. Just got clean swept and then went on to have my best year to date. So I'm just hoping that it's deja vu and, you know, got that bad event behind us and one event of 50. So 3 bets of hundreds. So let's do it, man. I'm excited.
Yep. It's a long road, man. It's a long road. I had a just the babyest little L. I mean, one of those ones where if the wife asks you how much money you made, you call it breaking even because it was close enough. Like went 2-2 on the bets, and the only thing that I really regret about last week, I didn't even regret my dart throw on Nick at plus 400, man. Like it didn't end up turning out well, but that's the kind of bet I have no problem making over time if you pick the right spots. The one thing I regret not doing is standing against everybody and their mom on Roman Hopilov. That was my one read last week that I felt it in my soul. I was the only one I heard even thinking about going the other way. And then on fight day, man, the line ticked the other direction. And I was like, that's it. That's my sign. Like, that's a sign from the gods that I'm on the right side here. And I still didn't have the balls to pull the trigger. I was kicking myself so hard after that first round because you knew he wasn't going to let up.
Hey, he looked great. You know, he had more volume than he's ever had in like all his fights combined. That's exaggeration, but he just looked a lot better, and congrats to him, man.
Big performance for him. What's up, MMA Propaholic? Glenbot 5000, Tommy Unders. All right, everybody. So a couple things, couple house cleaning items. Of course, as always, we are trying to rack up the members here at Pub Sports Radio. So if you haven't joined, make sure you jump in, become a member. We're going to have some really cool stuff coming. Members only shows, member only chat options, giveaways, things of that nature. So if you guys support us here at Pub Sports Radio, we will do the same by supporting you back. And then, of course, we are starting contests, everybody. You make sure you jump in every single week over here, pubsportsradio.com. We have free MMA Pick'em contests. You can pick the round, the method, the fighter, and it all has prizes. So you want to make sure you jump in. We still have the NFL contest running here, but right now, here's the UFC standings. We got Big Show picks, Billy Briz, and Evan L from the chat sitting in third place, right above none other than Boston Nick MMA, who you may see in the chat this evening, and the boss himself, Jeff Slaughter. So there's your top 5, top 6 running right now on these contests. Like I said, guys, they're free, so you're not going to have any issues or anything like that, and there's cash prizes. Make sure you jump in those. They're a heck of a lot of fun. Dan, are you ready to talk about some fights? Because I'm ready to get into this card, man.
Born ready. Let's do it.
Let's freaking go, man. As you all know, these lines are brought to you by Superbook Sports. Kicking off the evening, we've got Daniel Marcos taking on Saimon Oliveira. We have Daniel Marcos 13-0 making his UFC debut. Saimon Oliveira is 18-4. He made his UFC debut against Tony Gravely. These guys are both coming off of Dana White Contender Series. And I like everything I see from Daniel Marcos, Dan. I'll be honest with you, man. He's a slick operator on the feet. Lots of kicks, willing to stand right in front of his opponents, trade that nasty step in, uppercut. He's kind of one of these technical brawler types. He really wants to get into it with you. He's not going to shy away from a gunfight. And the only thing that kind of worries me is that last fight that he had right before he made it to the Contender Series. Looked like he was in like a junior high school gym, man. They had that thing cleared out with the bleachers like sitting right up against the side of the cage. There was a grand total of 20 people in the room, so you got to wonder about the level of competition he was facing pre-Dana White Contender Series. But I like what I see. Saimon Oliveira dropped the debut to Gravely, but honestly, a guy that put up a hell of a fight. He took a lot of big shots in that spot. He gave up a lot of bad positions in that spot. And he was still trying to stand toe-to-toe with Gravely deep in that third round, trying to put him out, land bombs. You got to kind of be impressed with what he did. My problem is he's a little hittable with counter shots. He fires from the hip, so he's hittable always. He does have these fast, low kicks. I like to see those. He does have a sick guillotine on him that he sells out for. He's got 11 wins by sub, 5 are by that guillotine, and he had Gravely in trouble in that first round. It was deep. Somehow managed to get out of it. Oliveira will have a 3-inch reach advantage here in this spot, and he finds himself the favorite. This is kind of a dogger pass spot for me, I would think, to kick off the card. At the same time, though, I think I'd be more interested in betting violence. I feel like this is one of those fights where we're going to find out real quick whether Daniel Marcos belongs or not, and I've got a hard time seeing this thing go 15 minutes. No totals to look at right now, but I would be looking at under probably when that thing drops. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think both these guys belong. I was very impressed with Marcos on Contenders, and what you got to understand is that was like his first fight in 3 years. So even Dana said it. One thing I like to do when I watch Contender Series is you watch the fight, and then afterwards I watch what Dana had to say in terms of why he signed them or why he didn't sign them. And he said, regarding Marcos that, this guy was coming off a 3-year layoff, and you could tell he was coming off a layoff by the time the second round came through, and the guy pushed through it. So he is one tough dude. And interestingly enough, he actually opened the favorite. The line flipped. So props to everybody that snagged up that plus 155 and all the dog money on Oliveira, because now Saimon is close to a minus 200 favorite. So you can argue the value's gone on Saimon. And now it's been a dogger pass situation this entire time. It was a dogger pass situation when Saimon was the dog. And now it's a dogger pass situation with Daniel as the dog. And I like Saimon a lot, man. I love a guy with a good guillotine. I know a lot of people don't like that, but I think that he's one of the guys that will get away with it. I actually think that he'll come out here and submit a lot of people in the UFC with guillotines. Maybe lower level guys, but I still think that he's a guy that when it's all said and done, he'll have a couple guillotine wins inside the octagon. He can also bang. You watch his fight with Jose Aldi, not Jose Aldo, but Jose Alde, I believe the guy's name is, who's also a true vet of the sport. And they banged it out, man. They were doing what we like to refer to here in Atlanta as hooking. They were hooking for 3 straight rounds. I mean, they went toe to toe. I think Saimon belongs. You know, the thing about this fight is I love the fact that Marcos, what separates him from other people from his country, he's from Peru. A lot of the Peruvian guys, they're known for, they have 0 takedown defense. You know, they'll be losing a fight and then get an opportunistic submission along the way. Whereas this dude, Daniel Marcos, goes in there on Contender Series. He actually stuffed 11 takedowns. Very hard kicker, solid hands, tough guy, and he's got some swag about him. You know, if he gets you hurt, he's not going to just let you recover. He's going to go right after you. The thing is, Saimon's going to do the exact same thing, and Saimon's a little bit more experienced. Saimon's fought the better level of competition. So, pure pick, I'm going to go with Saimon Oliveira to get the win here in Brazil. But, you know, I missed out on plus 155. Why would I bet it at minus 200? I wouldn't. So, it's a pass.
Yeah.
But pure pick, Saimon.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard to justify it, man, when the ship is sailed on the line like that. And that's where everybody tuning in, if it's your first time, I know it's probably not, but if it is your first time listening to the Die Hard MMA podcast, we are talking betting. So like I said, I think it's dog or pass at plus 150. I would take a stab on Daniel Marcos. If you want to say the favorite gets it done and wins, that's fine. I'm not going to argue that too hard. I do think this is going to be a banger, and one way or the other, somebody is going to find their way to unconsciousness. I think we will see the referee doing this thing at some point in this fight. So hopefully we get a good number on maybe an under 2.5 or something like that. We'll find out. But Dan's looking on the other side, Saimon Oliveira to kick off the night. I think it's going to be a fun fight, man. And always look out for that guillotine. Let's look for that sub prop when it comes out, because that number, if it's any juicy, maybe we take a shot at it. All right, we got 44 live viewers, everybody. I know there's a Monday Night Football game tonight, but it's not for like an hour and 15 minutes. If you're on Twitter, give this bad boy a retweet. If you're on Facebook or whatever,
right, we're retweeting.
Still,
we're retweeting right now. Let's retweet it right now.
There we go. There we go. All right, we'll both do it. Same time here. All right, guys. So thank you all again for being here, but hit the like button if you haven't already. Next fight up, we have got Luan Lacerda taking on Cody Stamann. And what a tough nut to crack for your UFC debut. I mean, I know the kid is looking good, 12-1, Nova União BJJ black belt, one of the training partners for the legend Jose Aldo. But fucking hell, man, welcome to the UFC. They're going to throw you to Cody Stamann. You know what? There's something I've always said when it comes to this MMA thing, Dan. And usually it's when you've got a high-level wrestler against a decent-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, the wrestler wins. They get on top. They have good enough submission defense. They hold that position. They hang on for dear life if they need to, or they beat you up from top position because you're willing to accept the bottom. And that's kind of how I see this fight playing out. Cody Stamann's a veteran of the sport, and I cannot for the life of me, Dan, wrap my brain around the fact that this guy is only 33 years old. Like, my brain tells me he's 37. He's like an age-withered veteran, and he's shot. He's 33. Like, this guy is still kicking in the prime years of his life, but they're throwing him to this young buck making his UFC debut. Yeah, he comes from a good gym. Yeah, he looked good. You know, the last time we saw him, very rangy, good counter boxing, long jab, snappy head kick, but he backs himself up to the fence. He like gives away the center of the cage. He lets himself gets walked back, and then he rolls for legs. He does have quick back takes. He's got a tight squeeze on him, good chokes, and that's all fine and dandy. But I've got a hard time seeing him hit somebody like Cody Stamann with that kind of a choke. Now, we have seen Cody Stamann dive headfirst into a guillotine. Said Nurmagomedov, with one of the quickest squeezes in the game, was able to snag him with one of those. But look at the record of Cody Stamann. Said Nurmagomedov, Merab Vashvili, Jimmy Rivera, Boom Kelleher, Song Yadong, Aljamain Sterling. Like, he's been fighting a solid level of competition in the UFC, and he's running about even at that mark. He's a strong gatekeeper at this point, with years to potentially improve, and he won his last fight by brutal knockout because he found an opponent that he really wasn't scared of. I got to wonder if Cody has that kind of confidence coming back into this fight. He's a big favorite in this spot. Cody Stamann goes back to maybe his point fighting decision type of ways, unless Lacerda can't take the beating that Cody brings forth. Maybe he finds himself in his second knockout of his recent run here, but let's be honest, he's mostly a decisionator type of fighter. So I'm going to say Cody Stamann gets the win, stays safe, plays it easy, ground control like always, and probably gets a decision win. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, the thing I've always respected about Cody Stamann is that he's just solid. You know, a lot of people like to, you know, kind of look down upon people that don't finish fights, right? Whereas if we're here betting, I don't give a shit if it's boring. I don't give a shit if you play it safe. I also don't give a shit if you cheat to win. Just win, right? But at the end of the day, you know, Cody Stamann does exactly what he needs to do to win the fight. It might not be spectacular, but he's solid. And he can win this fight a couple of different ways. You were talking about how he can get on top of Luan and neutralize him. That's one way. But what about, you know, anti-wrestling? You know, keep this fight standing, stuff all his takedowns, get it to the point where this dude, you know, starts flopping to his back. He starts pulling guard. And then Cody, you know, tells him, hey, get back up. Let's kickbox. So in that scenario, and also you got to bring up that this dude has, I think, like a 6-inch reach advantage. But the reason that it's not a big deal to me is because name me one opponent that didn't have a big reach advantage over Cody Stamann. Like seriously, I believe that Cody Stamann's had a reach disadvantage in literally every single fight he's had. I mean, he's like 5'4" with a 64-inch reach. You know what I mean? My girlfriend's taller and has a longer reach, but it's just one of those things where Stamann is a solid ball of muscle. He's got really good takedown defense. I mean, if you watch his fight with Brian Kelleher, it was almost like that BJ Penn versus Matt Hughes fight where Matt Hughes had BJ Penn's leg over his head and dude was balancing on one leg. And that's what Cody Stamann did against, not Brian Kelleher, against Brian Caraway, excuse me. He also whooped on Brian Kelleher too. But yeah, I mean, as far as him getting caught by Saeed, man, you see how long those arms are of Saeed. I mean, the way he got the other Saeed in that last fight was absolutely disgusting. Back to, you know,
don't remind me.
Back to the guillotine talk. You know, I'm a sucker for a good guillotine. But basically, bottom line, you know, to not be long-winded, I think Luan Lacerda is sub or bust. So either he's going to sub Cody Stamann or he's going to lose this fight. So I'm going to go Cody Stamann via unanimous decision.
I would agree, man. And one of the things I think that maybe bears mentioning here is I think Cody's going to have a tremendous speed advantage in this fight. When they're on the feet, like Lacerda looks like he's stuck in molasses. His striking is decent, don't get me wrong, but when you get these guys with that height and reach advantage, but they're just a tidbit on the slow side, these explosive, quick boxer types, if Cody wants to crash the pocket and get in there with bombs, I don't see why he can't land basically whenever he wants to. So short of getting caught in a knee bar, rolling heel hook, jumping guillotine, something crazy like that, I think this is Cody Stamann's fight all day. And if anyone wants to use him as a parlay piece, I don't see why not. All right, we're moving right along, everybody. We got a lot of fights to get to tonight. Everybody's main event up next. We've got Josiane Nunes taking on Zarah Fairn. And I've had a real hard time actually with this number, Dan, because everybody knows I love my leap of faith, cliff jumping type of underdog prices. And you have got Nunes at minus 500 to Fairn's plus 400. Man, at a certain point, size matters. Like we're fighting at 145 pounds. And I think every single time I've broken down a Josiane Nunes fight, I've said she's undersized. She's short. She is stocky. And it's not like she looks like Cody Stamann. She is not built of muscle. I don't see why she can't drop down to 135. She's just not that big. Now, she's a power brawler. She's got big, heavy hands. Seems like she's knowing what she's doing on the ground, too. If you put her on her back, she'll attack with elbows. She'll roll for arm bars. Like, she's dangerous anywhere this fight takes place. She's going to have a big speed advantage, 70% takedown defense, 9-1 record. Like, I love Nunes. She's my new favorite Nunes. Zarah Fairn, I mean, she's 6-4. She's nothing to write home about. 0-2 in the UFC. Got finished in both of them. One by sub, one by knockout. 36 years old. 2-year layoff. Like, none of this sounds good. But she's going to be 6 inches taller, Dan. She's going to be 6 inches taller with a 5-inch reach advantage. Like, she's a huge 145er. She's a real 145-pound woman. Now, she's got a bit of the tall man's defense thing where she'll kind of lean back and leave her chin up there. But I think Nunes is going to have a hard time landing on that chin, even if she wasn't leaning back. And she does everything hard, man. Big, heavy punches, stalking forward pressure. She just has no answer on the back. If she gets taken down, if she gets put on the floor, she has zero wrestling and zero jiu-jitsu skills. Now, she's training with Team Figgy over in Brazil, so you got to hope maybe she's getting some improvements. I mean, how much can you really expect from a 36-year-old? But shit, Dan, if this is a kickboxing match, I have a hard time making Fairn a plus 400 underdog. I mean, the two women that she lost to had to take her to the ground. It wasn't a situation they wanted anything to do with on the feet. She hurt Felicia Spencer before she got taken down. Again, no answer on the ground, though. As soon as it got down there, it was over. Megan Anderson was shooting for her life when they fought. Got her down. No answer once it gets down there on the ground. Can Nunes take her down? Is she even going to try? Like, I don't know, man. I have a real hard time with minus 500 in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time with minus 500 in a lot of spots. I mean, it's okay to pass, but I mean, let me ask you something. We were talking about Cody Stamann earlier. Who do you think has more knockouts on their record between Josiane Nunes and Cody Stamann?
Nunes.
I think they're both tied with 7, but the thing is, Cody Stamann's got like 3 times the fights, right? Yep. And how often do you see chicks with 7 knockouts on their record? You don't see that often because it's usually a bunch of controversial split decisions. You pay minus 110 on each side. You have 0 edge, and then you cry robbery like in the Ketlin fight. So to me, Jay Perrin just got released from the UFC. So I think Zarah Fairn is, no disrespect, but probably the biggest jobber on the roster right now, my man. And I think, she's gotten finished in the first round by 2 cans. Megan Anderson. I mean, come on, guys. You know what I'm saying? Don't even get me started on Megan Anderson. And yeah, Josiane's 5'2", but so what? John Lineker was like 5'3". I've seen John Lineker knock out dudes that are 6'1". So
that's true.
I mean, she knows how to use her height. So yeah, I mean, going forward, the size might be an issue, but the size is not going to be an issue versus Zarah Fairn. So I got Josiane Nunes to come out here, starch this young lady, and if she makes weight, she'll be a candidate for a bonus.
Man, I think my guy Aiden in the chat has the best question all day. Do we bet the under? And honestly,
what's the number?
I don't know. Like that, I'm looking right now. Let me check because they got nothing right now stateside from what I can tell.
I mean, we don't bet the under at minus 300.
Yeah, under 2.5 sitting at minus 125 right now. And honestly, yeah, I think I would bet that under because either it's going to be a stand-up match and Zarah actually shows that she's the bigger, stronger hitter, or she's going to show she's a bum again and she's going to end up getting whooped by somebody who brings heat, fight in and fight out.
Clint,
I don't mind that look at all.
Is Zarah and bigger, stronger hitter in the same sentence? You can't do that, bro.
That's probably fair, Dan. That's probably fair. Yeah, I don't like this fight. I don't like minus 500. I would look for a Nunes prop. I would look for the under. Like that's kind of how you got to play it. But frankly, I don't need Uncle Wheezy knocking on my door with a bag of oranges, threatening to beat my ass for betting on the lowest level fight on the card. So I'm probably not going to have any action on this fight right now, guys. Nunes is the pick. But from a betting standpoint, good freaking luck is the pick. I don't think I'm going to have much here. All right. Next fight up, we've got Warlley Alves making his return, taking on Nicolas Dalby. Dalby is 24-1. Warlley is 14-5. And Dan, this whole fight comes down to one question for me. Like, regardless of style, regardless of skill, like I don't care about anything else. One question: are we getting good Warlley or are we getting bad Warlley? Because those are the only 2 things that matter. He's 3-3 in his last 6, and when he shows up, he's a son of a bitch. Warlley Alves is a monster when he's in the driver's seat, but he's like the dictionary definition of a good hammer, bad nail type of fighter. If you take the reins out of Warlley Alves' hands, he takes his ball and goes home sometimes, man. I can't trust Warlley Alves as far as I can throw him. And this is essentially a pick 'em at this point. Slight favorite over to Warlley Alves. But I might hate Nicolas Dalby more than I hate Warlley Alves. He's one of these guys that drives me up the freaking wall, Dan. Like, he does that karate style risk adverse striking, which, like, okay, fine, you do you. He's a little undersized for the division, explodes into range, and when he hits that perfect shot, he puts people out, absolutely puts them away. But it's like 1 in every 5 fights that happens. The rest of the time, he's pitter-pattering with kicks from the outside. Decent wrestling, good on top, strong in the clinch. Like, those are all things that you like to see, but he's not really out here marking anybody, and he gives away the first round to everybody. He has to fight his way back into every single fight. Now, this is where this fight gets tricky, because you've got Warlley, who has a questionable gas tank and is a bad nail, so if you drag him deep, he fades, versus Nicolas Dalby, who fights his way back into every single fight. So the deeper this thing goes, the more it favors Dalby, but I don't want to put my money on a guy that has to fight his way back into a fight every single time. I mean, I'm not touching this fight, Dan. That was a long-winded way for me to say this is the biggest fireball and popcorn fight on the card. I am passing, and God bless you. Good luck to anybody who puts their money on this fight. Dan, talk to me. Am I missing anything, and is your money anywhere near this one?
Absolutely. And thank you for wishing me good luck, because I took Warlley Alves at plus 125, put 2 units on it. He's currently minus 125. So I already did my job regarding beating the line, which is ultimately what I care most about. Obviously, I'd love to win every bet, win anybody. But if I make 1,000 bets and I can be on the right side of the line 9 out of 10 times, I know that I'm going to be on the right side of the coin. So that's all I care about as a betting man. And basically, I mean, yeah, is Warlley Alves a 50-50 fighter? Yes, but that means that he also does win UFC fights. And which kind of UFC fights does he lose, and which kind of fights does he win? Let's talk about that. Well, is Nick Dalby fast and explosive and powerful like Jeremiah Wells?
No.
Is Nick Dalby heading towards the top 15 like Randy Brown?
Definitely not.
Okay, so is Nick Dalby 38 years old?
Is he 39 now?
Yeah, he's 38. All right. Just
the answer is a maybe yes.
The answers to these next few questions are yes. Does Nick Dalby usually get dropped or rocked in round 1 of every single fight?
The answer is yes.
Is Nick Dalby slow?
Yes.
Does Nick Dalby have shitty takedown defense?
He has a 65% takedown defense, so not great.
So
not the worst I've ever seen, but not great.
Doesn't that sound like the kind of guy that Warlley Alves guillotine chokes in the first round? Doesn't that sound like the kind of guy that Warlley Alves can do his front running and not have to face any adversity, go out there and steamroll this guy? Because listen, man, it's not like I'm picking on who's some, explosive, young, hungry guy that's emerging. It's not like I'm picking, again, like Jeremiah Wells. Like, did you see what Jeremiah Wells just did to Court McGee? Like, first exchange that he decided to let his hands go, he launched him into the 5th row. Yep. Like, Nick Dalby does not operate on the frequency of Jeremiah Wells. Nick Dalby does not have the physical attributes or the upward trajectory of Randy Brown. And you saw what happened when Warlley got a little step down against Munir Lazez. He absolutely ran him over. I think he's catching Nick Dalby at the perfect time. You know what's interesting about Dalby? He's the kind of guy that has wins over Zaleski, wins over Alex Cowboy, which we can talk about that 3rd round where he got that, favorable stand-up, but whatever. We'll put that on the back burner. Wins over Daniel Rodriguez, but he's also the only guy in UFC history to get finished by Jesse Ronson. And you can bring up steroids all you want, but I don't think any version of Jesse Ronson, juiced or non-juiced, is beating Warlley Alves in a fight. And I'm not trying to do MMA math here. I'm just saying that Nick Dalby, even back in the day in his prime, he was getting dropped like all the time. Dropped against Darren Till, dropped against Peter Sabata, badly got messed up against Zach Cummings, and he's known for he'll take that ass whooping and then he comes back in the 3rd round. And historically speaking, hey, if you can come back against Warlley, maybe he'll fade. But at 38 years old, and that fight he had against Claudio Silva, that's what I like to refer to as an old man fight, man. That was an ugly, ugly fight. And yeah, me betting on Warlley Alves to beat Nick Dalby, That doesn't mean I'm picking Warlley Alves to be a top 15 guy. That doesn't mean I'm saying that Warlley Alves is going to be a champion. All it means is I'm fucking betting on Warlley Alves to beat this guy, Nick Dalby. And then in his next fight, we can talk about fading him again. But plus 125 is what I got. It's currently minus 125. I think he's got all the athletic advantages. And as far as him fading in fights, I mean, I've seen him knock dudes out in round 3 before, like he did to Sergio Moraes, who was also a fading fighter, kind of like Nick Dalby. So don't be surprised. Like if Warlley gets a first round guillotine, a first round knockout, don't be surprised if Warlley wins a decision. So get me these first 2 rounds, survive this last round, and we win this decision. But if you want to finish him along the way, I'm cool with that too. So yeah, I got 2 units on Warlley Alves here at plus 125.
Damn, Dan, you're making a whole lot of sense here for me. And this is one where I have some very well documented bias and history with both these guys that kind of makes me want to just never touch it. But shit, that's
real quick. MMA Propaholic MMA Propaholic in the chat says he got Alves plus 145, but he's nervous. Dude, you did your job. There's nothing to be nervous about. Even if you lose this bet, the fact that you got it plus 145 and he's probably going to close minus 150, minus 170. Like, dude, you keep doing that long term, you're going to be on the right side of the coin. So you can't just, be so fixated on one outcome, right? Like long term, you beat lines by that amount, you're going to be on the right side of the coin. That's all that matters.
That is absolutely the game. And something here that, you know what, guys, I used to do this a whole lot and I kind of got away from it. I'm trying to flex it back into my handicapping technique is taking a look at the gambling splits, the way that the money has been coming in on these UFC fights. And things that jump off the page at you are when, the actual money is piled up on one side versus the amount of bets, or if the line is moving opposite of the amount of bets, which again, that's a Hopilov from last week's spot where I got to just sack the fuck up. No, what we've got here is 53% of the bets have come in on Nicolas Dalby. So the majority of people are picking and betting on Nicolas Dalby. However, 71% of the money is on Warlley Alves. And those are the types of numbers that you want to look at. So guys, I didn't have a bet on this one coming into it. I'm a little nervous, but shit, sitting here with my guy, my co-member of the Bald Gang, Dan, I may end up putting a little something on Warlley Alves. I'm not going to go big, but I kind of think all this is making a little bit too much sense. Plus, somebody in the chat, I apologize. I'd highlight you, but I missed it, saying that he's fighting at home, which this is UFC Brazil. Home turf advantage and home motivation. These are things that we want to look at. That I think,
and home vitamins and minerals.
Home vitamins and minerals. That is a big deal as well. Aiden saying I'm gonna get talked into every bet on the card. Yeah, maybe we'll see. But I do think I'm gonna go ahead and make Warlley Alves the pick, and I probably will end up putting some money on him as well. All right, everybody, hit the like button if you haven't already. We're up to 85 live viewers. Again, this is Pub Sports Radio. This is my guy, Dan, from Half the Battle. Make sure you give him a shout. Support him on Twitter and his own podcast. I'll be putting links to all of his stuff down in the chat below, or in the, what is it? Not the chat, the info tab, whatever the hell it is on YouTube. The description. Thank you. See, he's another YouTube professional over here filling in for me. The next fight we want to talk to you about is Terrance T-Rex McKinney taking on Ismael Bonfim, the first of the 2 Bonfim brothers. We got another set here coming into the UFC off the Contender Series. Ismael Bonfim is 18-3, and he's taking on Terrance T-Rex, who you all should know by now, who is 13-4. We got a close, tight line here, folks. Minus 130 for T-Rex, plus 110 for Ismael. And I kind of had to do a bit of a head scratch coming into this one. And I'm sitting here going, Terrance McKinney, he's only a minus 130 in this spot. You'd think T-Rex, the guy that we've seen nuking people left and right in the UFC, would be a minus 200, minus 220 over a debuting fighter coming off the Contender Series. But he's very affordable. Like this is where I need my tinfoil cap right now, Dan, because I feel like this number is a little short compared to what I would expect the bookies to release this number at. He's a killer be killed fighter. You guys know that. Maybe one of the fastest starters in the UFC. Terrance McKinney comes forward and tries to take your head off at the earliest opportunity. Good frame for the division. Strong wrestler. Sneaky submission offense. That's something everybody can kind of steal that sub prop at like 7 or 9 to 1 every once in a while, because he's got it in his back pocket if he faces another grappler. But he throws everything with his hands down, Dan. This guy, his best defense is a good offense. He wants to keep you on the back foot the entire time and basically just rely on you not coming back at him. We saw what happened. He took a very fast tracky, short notice opportunity in his last fight, trying to jump up against the Chin-nator himself. And I mean, you can't really blame T-Rex for going out there thinking one round or bust against Drew Dober on short notice, right? Like, he probably doesn't have the gas tank or the cardio to go 15 on short notice, so get him out of there as quick as he can. If it doesn't go your way, it doesn't go your way. So I don't hold that much against him for the way he fought that fight. But I kind of have a weird suspicion that Terrance might be a little chinny. I've seen him rocked and I've seen him hurt a couple times that makes me wonder. And the defensive void that he shows in every fight, just relying on being the one to get to the kill punch just that much faster, has me a little concerned. I mean, he got knocked out by Sean Woodson. He got finished by Derek Minner, which that's not a good look in hindsight. But all of his losses are by finish, Dan. So I do think that this is a bit of a coin flip, like the price suggests, but everybody and their mom is piling in on Terrance McKinney. I mentioned those betting splits before. 75% of the bets with 88% of the money on T-Rex here in this spot. Ismael Bonfim, you know, we've seen some sibling couples before. We've seen these sibling in the UFC. Yeah, what's that?
Did you say sibling couples?
Sibling couples, yeah. Well, wait, hopefully we haven't seen sibling couples, but sibling pairs, I guess, is sibling pairs is a better way to put that here in the UFC. And I think the Bonfim brothers are one of the better pairs that we've seen. They seem like they've got some real skills coming in here. And this guy's a rangy counter striker. He's got a nice long jab. He's got a leaping body kick that he likes to go to. He's another one of these guys that kind of will give up the back foot. He'll scoot back out of range and rely on his speed and his head movement. He rolls and rips the body, Dan. I love the way this guy attacks his opponent's body, but he's got big power in that left hook. He's got strong hips, good takedown defense. I have seen him like sell out jumping for the guillotine before, which it's always a little bit concerning, especially when you've got someone who can wrestle like Terrance McKinney, to think about putting yourself in a bad position against that type of fighter. But that also happened in a fight where I feel like he was fully in the driver's seat and really not afraid of what his opponent had coming across the other cage at him. I think Bonfim is going to catch Terrance McKinney with that left hook, Dan. You see Terrance McKinney get lazy with his combos. He'll throw like a 3 or a 4 punch combo, and every single time the right hook is the last thing to come, and he throws it kind of like this. I mean, it's lazy, it's low. He leaves his head completely exposed. And the way I've seen Bonfim backing up, looking for opportunities, and then rolling and countering with that left hook, it's going to be there all day in this spot. This is going to be a race to the finish. Whoever lands first is probably going to win by knockout. Violence is probably the way to go. I think Bonfim's going to pull the upset, and I think he's going to knock out Terrance McKinney.
Yeah, I mean, listen, man. Firstly, Terrance McKinney is the only man in UFC history to drop Drew Dober. He dropped that crazy ass chin. So, damn, that's pretty that's pretty crazy. And then his last fight against Eric Gonzalez just went out there and handled him accordingly. So, the thing about McKinney and, you know, first rounder bust and gassing this, it's not that he's in bad shape. It's just that the guy sprints. You know, like if me and you, if we get in our cars, right, and I'm driving 100 miles per hour and you're driving 60 miles per hour, who's going to run out of gas quicker? Me, because I'm going 100 miles per hour. So if Terrance decides like, hey, let's tone it down, let's go 60 miles per hour. I mean, if he can just develop a little bit more maturity, I think he's a problem, dude, because the guy is absolutely physical. He's got one punch knockout power. He's got good wrestling. He's got submissions. He's got size. He's got mad confidence. It's just about like, let's pace ourselves a little bit. Let's show some maturity in there. Because if he does that, I mean, I think he can come out here and win an extended fight. So it's one of those things where this might be one of those live betting opportunities, right? Like Terrance
Yep.
McKinney goes out there, doesn't get the finish, but really hurts him bad in that first round. If you notice that he's huffing and puffing, if you notice his corner has to give him some kind of speech to really lift him up because his head's down and he's like, man, why the hell did I not get this guy out of there in the first round? Well, then maybe you look at Bonfim. But my thing with Bonfim is, okay, so he's definitely very experienced coming into the UFC, and he belongs here, right? Like, he's not one of these guys that's like 5-0 that has no business here. Like, we saw a couple of those at the last card. The two guys named Nick, they might, down the line with some more seasoning, they might belong, Fiore and Aguirre, but they just simply weren't ready at this time, right? Whereas this guy was fighting like Renato Moicano back in 2014, which, by the way, he got finished in the first round, which there's no shame in. Also got finished by Adriano Moraes, who the guy that knocked out DJ, and then DJ
in
knocked
his
him
second
out
fight. In the
rematch. Well, yeah, I'm just saying, like, if you've been finished in the first round, you can be finished in the first round again. And Terrance McKinney is very good at finishing people in the first round. So I'm not going to be surprised by a Terrance McKinney finish here. It's just, historically speaking, when fights go past the first round, because of the kind of pace that Terrance McKinney pushes, that's why he tends to fall apart. But I think that if he can pace himself, I think he can be a problem throughout the fight. It's just, is he going to? And as far as Ismael, you know what his nickname is, right? It's Maheta, just like Thiago Santos. But the thing is, Thiago's in PFL, so there's only one Maheta in the UFC now. And so we need Ismael to get that hammer on his chest. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, listen, he's got some solid hands.
Mandatory. If your fight name is Maheta, you get the hammer.
He's got some solid hands. Like, he's good. It's just, I need to kind of see him in the UFC first to really gauge. Like, I have theories that maybe this guy could fight at 45. I think the physicality difference here is going to be huge. It's just like, can we not pull an epic stunt here after dominating the early going, Terrance? Like, can you just pace yourself, man? Like, I really do think Terrance is talented. I really do think that he's a guy that can have a bright future. It's just about let's show some maturity this time. And if he does, I think he's going to take care of this guy. So I'm going to go Terrance McKinney, but I'm not betting it for the sole fact that, I mean, if he pulls a stunt, you can't sit here and act surprised. You can't blame anybody but yourself, right? So
exactly.
But if it goes to dog money, I might do it anyways.
Hey, I don't see it going to dog money, but I wouldn't blame you one bit there. And there's always the round one Terrance McKinney prop, right? Usually they'll give you a little bit of plus money on that, and that can definitely be the way to go. I completely agree with you, Dan. I think that Terrance McKinney, if he would slow down, take a step back, pace himself just a little bit, he can be exceedingly dangerous. We'll see if he's capable of it. One of the things that he does is he's a bit of a company man. And now I know that's not necessarily a bad thing, but he's here to entertain the people. He's here to go out there and get that 50K. He wants the highlight reel to grow. I got to wonder if maybe it takes him another L or two before he realizes for the longevity he needs to slow down. If he comes out and he slows down this fight, this one could be it. He could turn that corner and be the more mature, better fighter on Saturday. I just haven't seen it yet, so I'm not going to expect it until I actually see it take place in the cage.
So where's Clint's infamous Contender Series debut fade?
So that is an angle that exists, Dan. And frankly, I'm a little pissed at myself for not taking the stab on it last week. Abdulrazak Al-Hassan was a minus 105. So it was like, does it count? Like, it's a pick 'em all week and he gets minus 105. I should have gone for that one there last week, but it doesn't count in this spot because Terrance is the favorite. If Terrance McKinney was underdog price tag, then the fade angle applies and he would have to be bet. But since he is the favorite, it doesn't actually apply. And real quick, I got to shout out our guy in the chat, the MMA prodigy, however you want to pronounce it, saying, is Clint Trevor Whitman now? You're not a coach, man. Bro, you clicked on the description of this video. You're in my show, my podcast, listening to me break down fights from a betting perspective. And I'm relaying a thing I saw a man do in the cage on multiple occasions versus different opponents that might be something you could take advantage of from a betting perspective. And you're going to tell me I'm not a coach? I'm not trying to coach anybody. If you want to download this and send it to T-Rex McKinney so he can pick up on my tips, you go right ahead. But you chose to come into a betting podcast and now you're making fun of me for literally breaking down the fight. That's what we're doing, bro.
Hey, take it easy. He's just a kid. Take it easy.
I'm just having some fun, man. No hate, all love, but like, that's what we're doing here. All right. If you disagree, that's always fine. You guys know that. I have no problem with respecting the opinion of somebody else. So if you think I'm wrong, fade the shit out of me. You go right ahead. All right, everybody, moving the show along. We have got Jailton Almeida, a 10-1 monstrous favorite. And Dan, when I saw this picture, I had to use it because boy hasn't looked like that in 2 years. He's been fighting at heavyweight nonstop. He hasn't been that skinny in a long time, but that's what Jailton is supposed to look like, weighing in at 205 pounds. They've set this fight up like 5 times. The UFC is dying to put Jailton Almeida in the cage against Shamil Abdurakhimov, Dan. 41 versus 31. You've got the aged veteran on a 3-fight skid, all 3 of those by knockout. Like, we've talked about this fight so many times. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to give it very little attention because, seriously, we've broken this fight down already 3 times or so on the podcast, and then it falls apart by fight time because Shamil knows what the UFC is trying to do. They're trying to buff up that Jailton Almeida resume with another finish. You got a 10-year age gap. You got a guy who's getting knocked out in the first or second round of every single fight. You've got Jailton Almeida, who fits at heavyweight just as well as at 205. He's a threat on the feet. He's a threat on the ground. Shamil got taken down 5 times by Curtis Blades and then wrecked. That's what's happening here. It's Jailton Almeida inside the distance. It's Jailton Almeida however and whenever he wants it. That's all I got for you on this fight, Dan. Do you see anything different worth talking about on this one?
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna get 5 takedowns like Curtis Blades. I think he's gonna take him down 1 time, and the fight's gonna be over shortly after. So yeah, I got Jailton Almeida. I'm trying to figure out what his nickname means. Malhadinho. My coach told me he's Brazilian, and I think it means tabby. What the fuck does tabby mean?
Is that like the cat?
Yeah, like something like I don't know, because it translates interesting with the language barrier and this and that, but it meant something. It meant something peculiar. That's for sure.
That's interesting. I mean, we're gonna have find somebody with credentials. We're gonna need that question asked so that we can figure out what the hell that name means. Because yeah, I mean, if he goes by Tabby, I mean, like, was his mom a cat lady or something? Like, that's a weird choice of name for a fighter.
It probably means something completely different is the funny part about it. Yeah, but I'll find out and let you know. I'll ask my coach tomorrow. My professor,
one of those dual word type of meanings that is something completely different in English.
Yeah,
gotta love the language. All right, everybody. Hey, sorry, we're not going to waste your time. Jailton Almeida by murder. Rest in peace, Shamil Abdurakhimov. He will get his walking papers after this one, I am sure. The next fight, though, that is a little bit more interesting is Thiago Moises taking on, I think,
Scott Jorgensen.
Moises Acosta. Is this, did this get replaced?
Yeah, it's Scott Jorgensen's cousin.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, that wasn't funny.
No, you're good. You're good. With last week, Dan, we had a couple fights that got like scrapped right at the last second. I thought it was happening again. And I'm like looking on Twitter. I'm like, did I miss the tweet? No, so we've got Costa coming in here, I believe on short notice, filling in here in this spot. Taking on, man, you know what? Thiago Moises is another guy that I've got a hard time with. I find it hard to trust him, even though he's really good and he's really young. He's training out of ATT, 27 years old, strong BJJ practitioner, good solid boxing. His losses are to guys like Islam Makhachev and Damir Ismagulov and Benil Dariush. Like, you really can't knock the kid. But for some reason, I feel like I'm always on the wrong side of him. When I finally sack up and think, you know what, this is the spot to go ahead and lay the wood, put that lumber down with this big favorite because he should win. He should bet on me, that recent money on him, and I think, you know what? There's no way. Like, he'll get caught again. He'll give it up again in this one. I lose money fading him on the underdog. I cannot get Thiago Moises right to save my life, but damn, he looked good coming out his last fight. First round submission over Christos Giagos, kind of reminding everybody who he is. And again, I've said it a couple times this show, Dan, and there's a couple more times I'm gonna say it. The age surprises me. He's 27. He's still a kid training at ATT.
Kid.
We're watching him grow up in front of us. He's a monster. He's absolutely a monster. Now, Costa, obviously filling in on short notice here, we had to do a little bit of a study trying to figure out where this kid is from, what he is capable of.
You got to do your fucking homework.
Do your fucking homework. Man, I like what I see from Costa. He's a shoot-the-box fighter making his UFC debut, and classic shoot-the-box. Like, if you've seen all the other shoot-the-box fighters get in there and go after it, you know exactly what to expect from Costa. He fought in the LFA right before he made it over here to the UFC. He's got that sharp, digging teep kick to the body. I love when fighters do that. We saw Charles Johnson put that to good use on Saturday. Big step in knees. He's a fast starter. He cuts good angles. He's got a strong 1-2 down the pipe. This guy's violence. This guy's built for violence, Dan. And I think that's the way we bet it. I think Thiago Moises should have him covered pretty much everywhere in the skill department, but he's also the kind of guy that can show up and pull a fast one on you because of the aggressiveness, because of the way that he fights. So I'm going to pick Thiago Moises for the win here in this spot, especially with the short notice. Maybe you see the gas tank issues, whether it's just the under you're looking for with the violence, or if it's Thiago Moises inside the distance with a submission or something like that. I think that's the way I'm looking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little more confident. I mean, not to sit here and, go on my high horse talking about a minus 300 favorite, but like, I mean, Thiago Moises has just seen a completely different level of competition, man. I mean, like, Look at the dudes he's been fighting, man. I mean, like, straight up, like, when you make your UFC debut against Beneil Dariush, you're fighting the Demir's Magulovs, the Michael Johnsons, the Bobby Greens, the Islam Makhachevs, and you even took down Islam Makhachev one time in that fight, dude. Listen, the Joel Alvarez fight, Joel's a dangerous guy, and Joel misses weight for all his big fights. So, Joel came in there with a little bit of a weight advantage. Not saying it would have made a difference, but just saying, Joel, the reason I rank Moises ahead of Joel is because Joel's big wins he didn't make weight for. And then you saw what happened when Thiago got a step down in competition against Christos Giagos. He handled him accordingly. The thing about this kid, Costa, I am not impressed at all. For a guy that has a 19-5 record, you've had 24 professional fights. I expect a lot more from someone with that kind of seasoning. And I think that for a guy, you mentioned the camp he comes from, like those dudes from Shoot the Box are known for having insane killer instinct and just going out there being Terminators. And I've seen Miguel, or let's just call him Costa, I've seen him go out there, spinning back kick a dude in the body. The dude was bending over, was ready to be finished, and Costa failed to find the finish there, which like I have zero issue betting on guys that win decisions, no big deal. But if on a regional show against a much lesser opponent, you're showing that he kind of lacks that. I don't want to say he lacks the killer instinct because I think that'd be kind of unfair, but he kind of lacks the IQ to materialize the finish, especially at this level. I was very unimpressed, and I think that you could honestly line Thiago Moises minus 400 in this spot. So he might be a good parlay leg.
Completely agree with you. Feels like it's a little bit short here in this spot, and I watched that fight, Dan. That's one of those baffling situations where you're like, the finish is on a silver platter, especially, and you said it right, because killer instinct isn't the right way to put it. This guy's built on killer instinct. He just didn't think to follow up on it. Like, it was the weirdest thing. Like, he absolutely
saw that, right?
should have gotten a finish. Yeah, I watched that one. It was weird. It was really weird.
Baffling.
I'm not sure what to make of it. But yeah, man, I'm with you. This one is definitely somebody I'd be interested in a parlay piece, especially against a short notice opponent. I also like the under, though. If there was ever going to be a banana peel spot where Costa caught somebody early, this would be it. I think it's Moises inside the distance, though. All right, everybody. We got 102 live viewers. We are about halfway through this card. Make sure you smash that live button for me. I want to give my usual shout out to Spectation Sports right now. They do some really cool stuff on the regional scene. I will have a link in the description below. You can use promo code DIEHARD for 20% off. Unfortunately, I'm going to keep it brief because I don't think we have a show this week. So I can't even really shout anything much out, but keep an eye out on them for the future. I always tweet it out whenever they've got a cool show coming up or something like that. We saw some UFC Ultimate Fighter veterans going at it last week. So there's always some fun stuff to keep an eye on the regional scene with them. Spectation Sports. All right. Next up, you know what, Dan? I did it again. I do this once every single card. I skipped one. So we're going to have to I skipped over the Lazez fight So we're going to have to take a quick step backwards here. Oh, did somebody fuck with me? Dan, I think somebody fucked with me.
What you mean?
I made all these sexy graphics, and for some reason, the Lazez one does not look like it's here. And I uploaded them all. That makes me angry. All right, everybody. Yeah, we'll still talk about it, but this is the second time this happened, and that bothers me. I put a lot of work into those damn things, so to not have the graphics where I need them, irritating. All right, everybody. We'll go ahead and do it old school for this one, and I got to sort this shit out because I can't keep messing up like this. Gabriel Bonfim taking on Munir Lazez. We're going old school. We got the topology pictures up here so you know who we're talking about. But it's the other Bonfim brother. It's the other Bonfim brother taking on Munir Lazez, and a guy that, man, Dan, I got sold down the river. I got sold down the river thinking that Munir Lazez was a monster. I was absolutely believing heart and soul in this kid. And another guy that, again, that age, I didn't realize he was 35 years old. He's actually more of a veteran in combat sports than I picked up on his last couple of fights. But the Bonfim brothers, I said it before, I'll say it again, I think they're legit. Gabriel is 13-0. This is his UFC debut. This would be a Dana White Contender Series fade angle, Dan, as you mentioned before, because he is coming in as the favorite over Lazez. We've got plus 155 on Munir Lazez, minus 175 on Gabriel Bonfim. Really fast hands on Bonfim. He's got the same long power jab that his brother operates behind. They both seem to have that. It's really good. 3-4 punch combos, always stays right in front of his opponents, and he's got an absolute piston of a right hand. He's slick with the pull counters. He gets you coming forward, bobs his head back a little bit, and then comes heavy with that right cross. Flurries and combinations when he gets his opponents backed up against the fence. You want some killer instinct? The Bonfim brothers have some killer instinct. His striking's on point, but man, he was a Brazilian national champion in boxing, but he's got 10 wins by sub. He's got nasty front chokes on him. The guillotines, the Darce chokes, like he beats people up on the feet. And then when they don't want none, he comes back at him with the grappling. That's how this guy seems to operate. It's pretty crazy. Lazez, Team Nogueira, technical fighter. He's another one of these guys that likes to control the space, set the pace. If he's not the one in the driver's seat, he doesn't appear to do as well. I mean, he got melted by Warlley Alves. We talked about that fight a little bit earlier. That's the one, Dan. I lost a pile on Munir Lazez that night because I was ready to shit all over Warlley Alves that night. Was not expecting him to just get run through that way. And that seems to be kind of his real thing, right? Is he's got a long, snappy jab, very intelligent. He's got that right head kick that he likes to go to. He rolls off the center line, rips the body. It's all good stuff. But when you crash the pocket on him, he can get backed up. He doesn't respond well to the pressure. And that's the kind of thing that we've seen take out Munir Lazez before. He's 11-2, can't knock the guy too hard. Will have a 4-inch reach advantage here in this spot. I'm kind of believing in the Bonfim brothers, though, Dan. Like I mentioned before last week with Javid Basharat, there's a few legitimate people coming out of the Contender Series that I'm not looking to get in front of. Javid was one of them. The Bonfim brothers are kind of another ones that fall in that category. That said, I think this is going to be a very competitive fight. I think Lazez is going to be technical. I think a lot of spots I'm looking at violence. I would almost be playing anti-violence in this spot. I think these guys may duke it out in the center of the cage, play that rangy game, and really just kind of go after each other. I think we could see a 15-minute kickboxing match in this fight. And that being said, I don't want any part of the judges, what they've been doing recently, if it's going to be a closely contested kickboxing fight. So the Dana White Contender Series fade says I must bet Munir Lazez. My brain is telling me that Gabriel Bonfim is legit. I'm going to pick Bonfim, and I think I'm going to pass. What are you doing here, Dan?
I mean, if you think it's going to be a split decision, you should take that plus 160 or whatever the number is.
I said it's going to be close. If I was calling the split, I'd be betting the money, but I'm not sure it's going to be that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm more impressed with Gabriel Bonfim than I am with Ismael by far. And you know what's funny is Laura Sanko, I think she said while Ismael was fighting, because, she's the commentator for Contenders. She said, "This is the lesser Bonfim brother." I think she said something like that. I was like, "Oh my God!"
Did.
Like, and at first I kind of thought the opposite. I was like, "Nah, Ismael's looking good," but when I really sat down and watched their careers, I think Gabriel's better. They do have similar styles. You know, they love to fight behind their jabs. They got decent offensive boxing. My issue with Gabriel is defensively speaking. He's definitely there. He's definitely there to be hit. He's ultra aggressive. So with that style, it's going to leave a lot of openings for counters. But one thing about him, his determination, his aggressiveness, like this dude has serious heart. He's going to walk forward the entire time. And if this becomes a battle of wills, I mean, we've only seen one of them fold over to body kicks before. We've only seen one of them, you know, say no mas before in a fight, and that was Munir, right? The thing about Munir, though, is I love the kickboxing. I mean, he's a very technical kickboxer, man. Also fights behind his jab, mixes it up to the body beautifully. Nasty leg kicks, can go upstairs. He can spin too. I mean, like, that fight he had against Razak and the fight he had against Angelusa, the volume, the technique, the variety, the arsenal, I liked everything about those performances. The only thing was that those guys he was up against, while I respect them as well, they didn't really bring the fight to Munir. You have to bring the fight to Munir to give him issues, and Gabriel is going to bring the fight to Munir. So the way I see Gabriel losing is in him going forward, leaving some kind of opening for a counter. It's just that I think that eventually the pressure of Gabriel can get to Munir, and down the stretch, whether it's a finish or maybe taking over in the last 2 rounds, maybe those Brazilian judges are going to favor him a little bit more. Every time he does something, the crowd's going to go crazy. Anytime that Munir does something, everyone's going to be completely silent. So I'm not saying it's not a dog or pass situation, because if you just want to test where Gabriel is at right now in his career, and you want to take that plus 155, plus 160 on Munir, and let's just test out this prospect, see where he's at. I completely understand it, and I'm not going to be involved in this fight, but pure pick, I will go with Gabriel. I was more impressed with him out of the 2 brothers, and if he can put the pressure on Munir, I think he can get the win.
I agree. And man, talk about a dirty call out on Laura Sanko. She absolutely said he was the lesser of the 2 brothers. And that just, I mean, man, we talk like that. We talk like that, but we're talking about gambling. Like, we got to identify who the real, you know, A side is when you get these sets of fighters coming in. But when you're the color commentator for the UFC, like, you're supposed to be propping everybody up, man. Don't call somebody the lesser of the 2 brothers. And nothing but respect for Laura Sanko. She's the hardest working lady in mixed martial arts. I'm actually a huge fan of her commentary. I love that she got the shot on Dana White Contender Series, but I got a good laugh out of that when I heard her say that.
You know, she probably watched it back and was like, "Fuck, I shouldn't have said that." You know, and for me, you know, I've commentated on a much lower level, you know, for the NFC. And it's just so much different when you're actually like in there, like up close talking. Like, sometimes, like, I know I'll go back and watch some of the fights I commentated and be like, wow, did I really say that shit? So I'm sure she probably thought the same thing, and I'm sure going forward, you know, she made some adjustments.
we all do it, man. I'm sure I've said some shit on this podcast, and if you play a clip back, I'd be like, oh. You know, I actually I know of one, in fact, because when I crowned Woodley the next great thing at 170 and laid the hammer on him against Usman, that aged real well, buddy. So I know all about that. All right. We're moving right along, everybody. We're back on track. We've got Gregory RoboCop Rodriguez, or is it Rodriguez? Because we're in Brazil, taking on Bruno Ferreira. This is a fun fight, Dan. It's going to be another action-packed slammer. You've got the RoboCop, and the maybe the most menacing picture on the slate today for RoboCop here. Minus 340. Bruno coming off the Contender Series as the plus 280 underdog. I mean, these guys are going to look like they're in different weight classes. It's another one of those spots. You've got Ferreira, who's just a short, stocky little monster. He was a plus 270 on Dana White Contender Series, Dan. Plus 270. Came in, smash and grabbed the bag, got himself out of there with a UFC contract. Like, he's exactly what the UFC is looking for at 9-0. But this is some tough matchmaking. We all know about Gregory Rodriguez at this point. The guy's huge. He's a monster. He's big. He's strong. He's got heavy hands. He's got that BJJ in his back pocket. Usually prefers to stand and bang, though. He does average 2.39 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he's got a 100% takedown defense rating himself. One of the weirdest cases in MMA, though, dude gets starched by Jordan Williams on Dana White Contender Series, one of the most throwaway fighters the UFC has had off the Contender Series, and then goes on this UFC run where he's just knocking everybody out. The only spot on that record being the split decision loss that a lot of people felt like went the wrong way. Like, he's been incredible since then. He's one of these guys that gets tired and keeps pushing. So you can't talk shit about his cardio because it never matters. He gets rocked and then he knocks his dude's head off. So you can't talk about his chin because, like, no matter how many times you look at him and you feel like, he's fading, he's about done. Thwump, like, he just kills the guy in the next shot every single time, manages to turn it around. He's going to be 5 inches taller. He's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage. And I'm struggling to see what Bruno does besides a meme knockout in this spot, Dan, because he's got a good blast double on him. Don't get me wrong, but he's one of these guys that dips his head and he throws those overhand nukes with bad intentions. He's got heavy ground and pound if he gets on top of you, and he just either murders you on the ground or is you to give up a neck. He's a killer be killed fighter himself. And I feel like with the height and the reach discrepancies, the level of competition difference, this is another Gregory Rodriguez inside the distance spot. Now, I mentioned the chin, so maybe you want to bet violence because Bruno can nuke people. He absolutely, if he catches anybody on the right spot, he's putting them down. He's got that kind of power. But I'm picking Gregory Rodriguez, and I got a hard time seeing this fight getting out of a round, Dan. What about you?
You know what's funny? I actually think that out of, him and Gregory Hobocop and Thiago Moises, they're lined about the same, right? But actually, I think that Thiago Moises makes a better parlay leg than Gregory Hobocop. I think that Hobocop is actually, it's a dog or pass situation, and I'll explain why. Look, I'm gonna pick Hobocop to win the fight. Like that. Like, yeah, he's a big favorite for a reason. Like you said, the experience, all that stuff. I don't need to repeat what you just said. The reason why I think that it's a dog or pass situation is because of the kind of fight this is going to be. You mentioned it. This guy's Gregory has got a big jiu-jitsu advantage. When the hell does he ever use it, Clint? You know what I'm saying? When he fought that 6-1 kickboxer, like, you can call that
about as often as Sean Strickland does, Dan. About as often as Sean Strickland does.
Dude, that fight he had against the 6-1 kickboxer, Petrosian. Like, dude, who cares who you score that fight for? Can we all agree that he could have made that fight a lot easier than it was? It's just he likes to bang. And as a fan, how can you not love it? The guy's going to draw a line in the sand. He's going to go out there, stand and bang. Regarding the Jordan Williams fight, a lot of people that have heard me talk about Jordan Williams, they know what I'm about to say. Jordan Williams at 185 and Jordan Williams at 170, two completely different guys. Here's my proof. Jordan Williams at 185 pounds knocked out RoboCop, went to a split decision with Ramazan Kuramagomedov, a serious undefeated Russian, and had a serious brawl with Nasruddin Imavov, who's in the top 15. But then he goes down to 70, and you guys remember, prior to him dropping to 70, he said, the doctors say I shouldn't drop to 70 because I have diabetes. Yep. He goes to 70, he gets starched by Mickey Gall. He gets starched by Ian Gary. The guy just can't take a punch at 170 pounds, whereas at 85s, not saying he was going to light the world on fire, but at least he's competitive in these fights. So I just think Jordan Williams at 85s and at 70s, two completely different guys. Now, back to Hobocop and what's his opponent's name? Bruno Ferreira. I mean, they're going to stand and trade in the center of the octagon until one man falls. And, like, even in that last fight Hobocop had with Chitty, like, let's not act like that was smooth sailing, man. Like, you remember the fucking cut my boy had? Like, you remember what kind of shit he had to overcome? So just saying, like, I'm not going to fault anyone for taking that half-unit shot on the underdog here and hope that they stand and trade in the center of the octagon and someone goes down, because that's most likely what's going to happen. Yes, I'm going to pick Hobocop for all the reasons you mentioned, the experience, level of competition, blah, blah, blah. But just based on how he fights, like, he doesn't fight smart. He fights in a way I love to watch, and I'll never miss a Hobocop fight, ever. I mean, will you? Will you miss a HoboCop fight?
Definitely not.
Exactly. Like I'll miss a Holly Holm versus Ketlin Vieira main event, but there's no chance in hell I'm gonna miss a HoboCop fight. So these two are gonna draw a line in the sand, fight like they're double parked in front of a fire hydrant, and someone's gonna hit the deck. Most likely, RoboCop knocks this guy out, but at a price like this, I ain't laying this price. So that's all I gotta say.
I'm right there with you, Dan. This is one of those spots where I think you nailed it. And I'm glad you mentioned it because obviously we're talking about betting. We're trying to give people information, help them to make better bets themselves. And I think Thiago Moises is a parlay piece, and that's because of his defensive capabilities, right? I think he's a much more solid pick to win this fight. He lets down a whole lot less. Someone like RoboCop, he's going to throw himself right in the fire. We've seen it before. He's gotten clipped in every single fight. He's gotten hurt and rocked. Like, he is going to put himself on the platter to be the guy that busts your 8-leg favorite UFC parlay because he's going to go in there and bang with this monster that calls himself the Hulk. So if you're going to bet it, bring that price tag down with RoboCop inside the distance, maybe, you know, something like that. Don't parlay him. I know all you are going to parlay him anyway, but this is probably the guy you want to avoid parlaying. I could see him being the one who busts the big score for everybody on Saturday. I'm with you. I'm picking him to win. I think he finishes. We'll see what happens. We'll see what the Hulk can do on Saturday. All right, everybody. I've got some very exciting news. I'm excited to break this to you guys. So UFC 283 coming up here on Saturday. Some of you may have been privy to the giveaways that I've been doing on Twitter for these big pay-per-view cards. I partnered up with the Majestic, which is right here in Phoenix, big theater with an awesome kitchen and drinks. We've been giving away 2 free seats to these UFC pay-per-views every single time they come around, and they have partnered up with Superbook Sports. That's right. Your boy set it up between the 2 partnerships. You got to love to see it. We are hosting fight watch parties for UFC 283 at the locations you see listed here. So if you're in the Valley area and want to come have an awesome experience watching UFC 283, they're going to be doing it, and Superbook Sports is going to be there. We're going to be handing out merch, you know, maybe some deposit codes, sign-up bonuses, shit like that. I'm not sure. I got to actually talk with the people at Superbook what they've got in mind, but we're rolling out the red carpet on Saturday. And yes, I'm still doing the giveaway. So if you want 2 free tickets to go to this experience, follow me on Twitter. I'll be tweeting it out this evening after the show. We'll be picking a winner a little bit later in the week, but we're going to give away 2 free tickets, and I'm going to be there. I'm actually going to be at this one. So if you guys want to come hang out, meet me in public, do some live betting, that kind of shit, come enjoy, have a good time. It's called the Majestic, and I got to hit up my boy Narco Cop because I know he's a local here. Might have to get him over there in the theater and hang out. That'd be a good time. Next fight that we want to talk to you all about is it's sad, Dan. It's sad. We've got the retirement fight for none other than Mauricio Shogun Rua taking on Ihor Potieria.
Ihor.
Ihor. My bad. So we've got Ihor coming in here. And are you sure it's not Eeyore? No.
Like my boy, the donkey?
Exactly. Pin the tail. No, this is, man, it's not even Shogun anymore, Dan. Like, this is the bones, the skeleton, the man that was Shogun is coming in here for this fight. Mauricio Rua, I'm surprised he didn't hang it up sooner. He probably should have a couple fights ago, frankly, but the legend is going out. 2-3-1 in his last 6. His 2 wins being a robbery split decision over Nog back in 2020. And then he did knock out Tyson Pedro, but that was all the way back in 2018. Like, those are his 2 most recent victories. It just gets uglier and uglier every time we see this guy in the cage, Dan. I don't know what else to say about it. Somehow he's competing, you know, got mauled by Paul Craig in what was the only way that fight was going to end. I was surprised the first one went the way that it did, but coming back, running it back for the rematch, you knew Paul was just going to kill him. And then the OSP fight, yeah, he went to a split, but OSP is another guy that's firmly in my fade tank. He's another guy that you don't want anything to do with betting in the UFC right now, on his way out. Ihor's nothing to write home about, man. He's a fighter that I successfully got over the Contender Series fade with Nicolas Negumereanu, my guy that's an absolute monster wrecking ball. But the way Ihor comes at people, especially early, I don't know that Hua can take that offense right now. Now, he's a flawed fighter. He's a flawed fighter, folks. So if this fight gets extended and somehow Hua does that thing where that steel Brazilian chin is on show again and he manages to fight his way deep into this thing, he should be able to find a way to beat Ihor. But honestly, like, it's youth, it's strength, it's speed, it's size. There's no way in hell I can bet Hua on Saturday. And I would, it's another fireball and popcorn fight, Dan. I'm going to hope the legend doesn't get murdered in front of my eyes. There's no way I can lay minus 200 on Ihor until he shows us a little something after his last fight. But frankly, I think if you built somebody in a lab to beat him, it was Nikolai Negumereanu. I loved that spot so much when he fought him. I don't think that Hua, this version of Hua, is the same kind of guy. So talk to me, Dan. Let me know what you think about this one. How are we sending off the legend here on Saturday?
Dude, you don't need to beat someone in a lab. You don't need to make someone in a lab to beat Ihor, man.
That's too much effort.
Ihor, I'm not convinced Ihor belongs in the UFC. Like, dude, in Ihor's fight, the one right before Contender Series, he gets dropped by like a 5'8" heavyweight, like some random bum. And when the guy goes to follow up, Ihor gets him with a triangle choke. So like, this guy's getting dropped by random nobodies. His record's completely padded. He goes in there on Contender Series. I didn't think he looked good there. Goes into the UFC. And I mean, like, it's not just that he lost to Negumereanu, it's the way he lost. He's starting to turn away. He's starting to walk, with his back facing his opponent.
Yeah,
like,
it got ugly.
I think that, look, here's the issue. The issue is, the 15-year age gap and this and that. Mauricio Shogun, or as we like to say in Brazil, Clint, Mauricio Shogun, he's not quite, it's his retirement fight. The name Shogun, obviously there's kind of like the samurai, Shogun, but then there's also like the racing horse, right? And this racing horse is at its last leg. So it's like one of those things where if you give me, you don't need to give me a prime Hua to beat this guy, but even if you give me Hua from a couple years ago, I think he beats this guy for sure. And since 2015, Shogun's 5-3-1, and so it's not like he's out here. It's not like he's 3-5-1. He's 5-3-1. So he's at least like got a winning record in the last however many years. So it's just, I think Shogun's better than this guy. It's just my issue is when Shogun gets wobbled by a jab, I got no one to blame but myself if I take the odds on Shogun here. But like, I'm not laying minus 200 on Ihor against anyone on the UFC roster. Maybe Fabio Chiron if they bring him back, because that guy throws 2 strikes per round. So all you got to do is land 3 strikes per round, and we're gonna beat this guy, But I don't know. Hopefully Shogun,
who's the guy Eric Anders knocked out?
What's that?
The guy Eric Anders knocked out, the Brazilian dude that was the big submission artist.
You talking about Mamouche?
Mamouche, that's it. The former chinniest fighter on the UFC roster. That man couldn't take a punch to save his soul.
Yeah, I mean, dude, like, I really don't think there's anybody I'd lay minus 200 on Ihor on in the UFC. Like,
agreed.
I really think that this guy might not belong. Like, straight up. Like, what about Ihor has he shown that is UFC caliber? He's got a completely padded record. He was getting dropped by jobbers on the regional scene. His UFC debut, he's turning his back to his opponent. I don't think this guy belongs. It's just that, unfortunately, my boy Shogun is 41 years old. But I don't know, man. Like, I don't know. Like, when I don't know like this, that means it's dog or pass for me. It's just that if, Ihor flicks a paper ball at Shogun's chin and he goes unconscious, I can't sit here and act surprised. I can't sit here and blame it on variance. I can't sit here and blame the judges, the ref. I got no one to blame but myself. But I low-key want to bet Shogun here. Not big. Maybe a 1-unit shot. Just because I think this dude Ihor, I don't like disrespecting fighters, of course. Like, You know,
Sure.
this guy's in the UFC. And this guy, you know, would pick me up and throw me out the cage and then kill me, you know? So, but man, I just don't think he belongs. And if there's a winnable fight for Shogun to go out on, like that last fight with St. Preux, like St. Preux might also be on his way out, but like there's levels, man. St. Proux's got the most or second most submissions in the history of this division. Like, it's just a completely different level. Paul Craig beat him. Paul Craig, you know who else Paul Craig beat? Paul Craig beat Ankalaev. Paul Craig beat Krylov. Paul Craig beat Jamahal Hill. Paul Craig beat Kennedy. He finished them all. So it's just Shogun getting finished by, like, you know what Paul Craig would do to Ihor? So listen, I might be way off and I'm willing to take shit on this, but I am not going to disrespect my childhood hero, Mauricio Shogun, and pick against him here. So I'm going to go with Mauricio, and I'm praying. You know, you seen that meme I posted whenever I do a group prayer, and it's like, you know, the dudes are like, you know, everyone's holding hands, and then they got the dog in the middle.
They got
they're
the
all
dog in
holding
there
his
with
paw.
them.
Yeah, we're going to post that meme. Like, don't let, you know, let's pray that Shogun doesn't lose to an 0-1 guy in Brazil for his retirement fight.
No.
Like, that'd be terrible, man. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Mauricio Shogun to knock this kid out and sail off into the sunset.
Yeah, man. I mean, you guys know I'm all for betting the mangy dog that nobody wants to put their money on, but this is like the old bloodhound that's laying on your porch and you haven't seen move for 6 hours. So you got to go check on to make sure they're still there with you.
Hey, put up Aiden's comment. He made a really good point.
Aiden saying if no one
not that one, not that one. The Mozharov one.
Where's the Mozharov one?
He said,
okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The biggest fraud in UFC history.
This dude, Ihor, he might still win just because Shogun is ancient, but this dude, Ihor, is a complete fraud. Yeah. Period.
Yeah, the guy, for those of you not recognizing the name, that's the guy that had the padded record. He was supposed to be like a 10-1 fighter or something coming into the UFC, and then Sherdog got a sniff that he had maybe fought under other names and aliases. He ended up being like, well, it was like 17-14 or something by fight day. The number of his losses just kept on ticking up until by the time the fight came around, they damn near pulled it because it was so bad. And then he almost knocked his man out in the first round, which would have been absolutely hilarious. But yeah, no, he does give the fraud vibes for sure. And maybe a live bet situation, because we saw what happens when you extend him past that first round. If you feel like jumping in at that point and celebrating one last time with Shogun, you know, Dan, maybe this was a gift. Maybe Dana White said this guy is a fraud and he sucks, and we got to get Shogun a win at home in Brazil. So they're going to send them the shittiest fighter on the roster to try to get him one last fight in Brazil and send him out on a dub. That might be what's going on here, folks. So
I mean, that's what they're trying. That's what they're trying. It's just that Shogun's at that point now where, like, he will get wobbled by jabs. Like, one bad spot and he might be like, dude, I've had a long career, I don't need to be here anymore. But you know what's funny? So when I was watching the second St. Preux fight and I was listening to DC's commentary, something interesting that DC said was Shogun was fighting here in the UFC before me, and now he's fighting in the UFC after me. Like, Shogun is a true fighter. Like, the fact that this guy has surpassed all these different fighters that have come and gone and he's still here. I mean, this guy is a Hall of Famer. This guy's a legend. And for some of y'all that haven't seen like his classic fights, I just recommend you go back. So yeah, you know, I got a soft spot in my heart for Mauricio Shogun.
So Hua by TKO in round 2 is 16-1.
I would just play him straight if I played him. He's plus 180. I don't need to get cute. Give me a controversial split decision. Give me a DQ. I don't give a fuck. Just whatever it takes, kid. Plus 180. But it would have to be a small bet because, again, you can't go big on someone in the state of Shogun. And when, you know, when Augusta, to quote Connor, Augusta winning, he does the chicken dance, you got no one to blame but yourself, right? So
it's true.
I completely understand that. It's just there's literally no way I'm laying minus 200 on Ihor against anybody in the UFC.
That's one of those for the culture type of bets too. Like you want to be in there feeling good vibes on Shogun by knockout at 5-1. I don't blame you one bit. I don't blame you at all. All right, everybody. We're getting down to the good stuff here. We should be about on the main card of the evening. We got a whole lot of viewers now, everybody. Thank you all so much for spending your Monday night with us. I'm joined by my guy, Dan, from Half the Battle, the legend himself, breaking down UFC 283 from a gambling perspective. Hit the like button for us. Subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio if you haven't already. And we're talking Paul Craig taking on Johnny Walker. I mean, this is like the meme fight of the night, Dan. You've got the two guys who can win or lose on a whim, the most double-edged swords the UFC has to offer. And they're like, fuck it. We'll just throw them in there with each other. I love it. I am here for this fight. Paul the Bear Jew Craig is your underdog at plus 155. Johnny Walker, the minus 175 favorite. You've got Paul Craig, who's 35 years old, 30 years old on the comeback here for Johnny Walker. It's a little concerning because Paul Craig was the guy that said, I'm going to retire at 35. My 35th birthday, that's it. Cut it off. I'm done. And then, of course, like every MMA fighter retirement we've ever seen in our lives, he moved those field goal posts back just a little bit. Said he's still got some left to give. He's still got some fight left in him. He's making good money. Why wouldn't you keep going? Paul Craig has a 76-inch reach. However, Johnny Walker has a massive 82-inch reach. Dude's got a reach advantage over basically everybody. I mean, this is a striker versus grappler as it gets, Dan. Like, you've got Paul Craig that snapped Jamahal Hill's arm. He's a guy that submitted Magomed Ankalaev, like you mentioned earlier in the night. You do not want to be on the ground with Paul Craig. The floor is lava. And then you've got Johnny Walker, who, frankly, he's a pretty incredible striker on the feet. He just has no chin to back it up. I don't know what happened to this poor guy, but a cold shower could knock him out at this point. He does the flail. The Jamahal Hill highlight is going to be ran forever because of the way this guy fell back after getting quite literally bonked on the forehead. I mean, under? You bet the under. Because Jamahal Hill, now, I called the submission over Ion Cutelaba. He's got an underrated grappling game, Johnny Walker does. And with that chin concern, you'd think maybe he'd want to take it there, but not with this guy. Like, I don't want to be grappling with Paul Craig. If Johnny Walker thinks he wants to go out there and Jared Van Dera pissing contest style, go and try and out grapple the grappler in this spot, Paul Craig's going to tie him into a pretzel. I don't think that's a good call at all. You use your height, you use your reach, you use that length, and you piece up the guy who in Paul Craig is shown maybe doesn't have the best IQ standing, also maybe doesn't have the best chin standing. I think Johnny Walker can beat up Paul Craig without this thing necessarily hitting the ground. However, if it does, I've got zero faith in him surviving that. And Paul Craig also is going to be extremely live for just an overhand right. If he touches Johnny Walker on the head, this fight could be over. You could see Paul Craig getting a non-grounded pound TKO victory on Saturday. So complete stay away from me. Maybe one of the most fun fights on the card. This thing could be over in 30 seconds. It could get into the second round. It could be a sub. It could be a knockout. All avenues are on the table for this one, Dan. How do you see Paul Craig versus Johnny Walker playing out on Saturday?
I have no idea. I mean, like, I'm so bad at picking Paul Craig fights. Like, it's a joke at this point. But I can break down the different scenarios of how this fight might take place. I mean, like, for example, Johnny Walker, man, when he first came into the UFC, I thought that he was the guy. Like, because remember how when John Jones was champ, the whole thing was that he had such big physical advantages over literally everybody, right? But now, well, not now, but a couple years ago, you had Dominic Reyes coming up. Now he's completely done. But I'm saying when he was coming up, he was like, the 6'5" guy with the 80-inch reach who, was athletic and could actually match Jones in terms of like physicality. You had, you got the guys like Rakic coming up. You got Walker in the main event. You got Jamahal Hill. So like that new era of light heavyweights, the reason I was bummed that John Jones, left is because he left right when that new wave of guys that can match him on physicality were coming into the division. So I was really fucking bummed. And I'm even more bummed that he's not fighting Francis. Like, yeah, Cyril and Jones, okay, cool. But it's going to be a 5-round sparring match. I hope I'm wrong about that. But what I wanted, and also it's for the heavyweight championship, but you can't call the winner the baddest man on the planet because Francis is the baddest man on the planet. And I wanted to know what would happen if Jones got cracked by Francis. So usually I'm like the guy that's defending the UFC and thinking that people are overreacting. This is one of those spots where I disagree. And I'm like, dude, like, okay, like, let Malcolm Gordon go. Let fucking, Jay Perrin go. But Francis Ngannou? Like, Francis Ngannou, like, that's a guy you got to, like, go all in on and build him up to be your Mike Tyson. So
it's upsetting.
I mean, I'd love to be a fly on the wall for those negotiations because maybe that would open my eyes and I'd have a different opinion. But from the outside looking in, this is one of the few times that I'll literally say that I thought the UFC dropped the ball on that. Back to this fight. I mean, there's a scenario where Johnny Walker flying knee knocks him out. There's a scenario where Paul Craig pulls guard, triangles him, or Paul Craig pulls guard. Johnny Walker gets back up, tells him, nah, son, we're fighting on the feet, So there's just so many ways it can go. Or it could be Johnny Walker whooping his ass for 2.5 rounds, getting triangled in the third round, like he did to Ankalaev, like he did to Kennedy and Nzechukwu. I have no fucking idea. It's just that Paul Craig does not win minutes in fights. And credit to Paul Craig, he blast doubled Ankalaev. So that's pretty badass. Like, he didn't just get that fluke submission at the end. He blast doubled him in the fight. So you got to give him credit for that. I don't know. I'm going to go Johnny Walker just because, Paul Craig is not a guy that can that really wins minutes in fights. It's just more like big moments. But when I think about it, Johnny Walker is a big moment guy too. So I could see it going either way. My pick is Walker, but I'd rather just sit back and watch this fight because I can't pick a Paul Craig fight to save my life.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm going to pick Johnny Walker by knockout myself. I think he's shown flashes of better IQ recently. He's starting to protect that chin just a little bit better, and I think that's the clearest path to victory in this fight. Floor is lava.
Well, hold on. Sorry. What evidence do you have that he's protecting his chin better? That last fight with
his last fight.
But that last fight they grappled the whole time. There was no like stand-up exchanges, right? I'm pretty sure.
But that's the point, right? He knew not to stand up with Ion Cutelaba. He went to the ground with a guy that a lot of people thought he would be at a disadvantage against wrestling, proved otherwise, and didn't let the guy that can throw bungalows touch his chin. To me, that's a fight IQ improvement from Johnny Walker.
Okay,
He's been going out there. Yeah. He's just showing me that he understands these guys that can come in crazy and nuke him, you don't want any part of. And if that kind of thought process holds true here, again, for me, is you use your reach. This is the guy you strike with. You stay on the outside, a guy that you're faster than, a guy that you're more technical than, a guy that you can touch who can't hit you back from the same reach. I think Johnny Walker gets the knockout in this spot. Not putting my good hard-earned money on it. We'll definitely be watching this one with a couple shots of Fireball and a bag full of popcorn, though, because it's going to be a damn good one as long as it lasts. There are some books out there that do the wins in under 30 seconds or whatever. This one might be a contender if you feel like degenning out and sprinkling a little bit. This could be the fight you take that stab on. Johnny Walker in like under half a round or whatever, get 6-1 on it or something like that. I could see that taking place here. All right, everybody. Next up, we have got Jessica Andrade taking on Lucky Lauren Murphy. And if you have listened to this podcast more than once in your lifetime, you know that I absolutely love Lauren Murphy. That's my girl right there. She's the old rabid dog at 39 years old, built like a freaking monster, and just keeps doing the damn thing. I mean, 16-5, a veteran of the sport. Her only loss in the last 4 years to Valentina Shevchenko. Like, I love Lucky Lauren Murphy, man. She had a big late career resurgence, and it's been fun. It's been fun. You don't want to go physicality for physicality with Jessica Andrade. 31 years old. Dan, I mentioned it before. What the hell? She's only 31? Like, I thought Andrade was 36 or something like that. She is another fighter who's already touched gold in her life, who's been around forever, who fought Valentina Shevchenko, who fought Weili Zhang, Rose Namajunas. She fought Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Claudia Gadelha. She's only 31 years old, and she's rocking the OnlyFans too. Like, what more could you want? Nobody goes physical for physical with Jessica Andrade. And I hope, as a fan, much like Rocky Pennington got her hand raised last weekend, because I'm a fan of hers too, I want to see Lauren Murphy get another crack at the belt. I'd love to see that before she was done. I don't think she's getting by Jessica Andrade, Dan. Like, I think that Jessica Andrade is going to nuke Lauren Murphy at home in front of a screaming crowd, and she pulls a Jose Aldo and goes running off into the stands. Wouldn't be surprised if she got a little smart and used a little bit of wrestling. Murphy has really good takedown defense, though. Like I said, that physical strength, she's hard to get down. This one might actually go the full 15 minutes. I wouldn't be surprised if Lauren's able to kind of hang in there, but Andrade is absolutely the pick.
I got so much respect for Lauren Murphy. Like, to start your UFC career 1-3 and then make it all the way to a title shot against Valentina. Like, hey girl, much respect. And, you know, she used to have like this terrible attitude at the beginning of her career, and now she's like kind of inspirational. So like, not only did she turn around in terms of like, now she's winning fights, but she turned around up here mentally. And I got nothing but respect for Lauren Murphy's and her story. She's overcome a lot, right? So
yeah,
Lauren Murphy's got my respect. It's just back to kind of like what we were talking about with Josiane Nunes earlier on the card. When you have, you know, one hitter quitter in the women's weight classes, that goes a long way, because you don't often see that, right? You're so used to these controversial split decisions like Rocky and Ketlin last week. But when you have someone that, you know, maybe the technique isn't the prettiest, but they have that one hitter quitter. I mean, these chicks have never been hit like that. So right there, plus Bata Estaca. What does Bata Estaca stand for again? I don't remember what that means, but
that's another good one.
What I do know is it's not just the blitzes, like the like kind of John Lineker type blitzes. She can also come out here, pick you up, walk you across the cage, Matt Hughes style, slam you down. She's got a nasty guillotine. Didn't she tap out Joanne with that guillotine back in the day? Like, and the way
she got that standing arm triangle choke over Lemos recently. Like,
oh yeah, I forgot about that. Exactly. And that's like the only one in UFC history. Like, to get a standing arm triangle, like, just saying, as like a purple belt myself, that's a very rare thing to get. You have to, that squeeze must be ridiculous to get something like that. And just the way she's been handling these girls is beautiful to watch. And, or it can be kind of hard to watch depending on where you're coming from, right? Because she's battering them. She probably batters Lauren Murphy too. I got a lot of respect for Murphy. I think she's tough, so there's a chance she survives. Also a chance she doesn't survive, but bottom line, I think the big favorite probably covers a price tag here.
I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you. Whether it's battering her for 15 minutes or actually going out there and getting that finish, it's a problem. It's a problem. I do think that she's probably going to end up taking Lauren Murphy out, man. I don't like it because I'm a fan, but yeah, she's probably not going to get by this one. All right, everybody. We have just a couple fights on the docket left to talk about, but for those of you in the future who are running this back a little bit later in the week, first off, what's up? This is Monday night, and there are football playoffs going on. Dan, who do you think is taking Bucks and Cowboys? You got anything on that tonight?
I mean, dude, the Falcons. Did you see my tweet from earlier?
No, I missed it.
Okay, hold on. Let me pull this up so I can tell you exactly what happened. So, everyone watching, if you don't know me, my name is Daniel. I'm from Atlanta, so that means I root for Atlanta teams. So yesterday, here's what I tweeted. This is a true story. So yesterday, I hit up my dad yesterday to see if he wanted to get the dogs together and meet up at the dog park. You know, I got German Shepherds. He's got German Shepherds. It's like a family thing. We meet up. We go to the dog park. So his response was, the NFL playoffs are on. So I said, but Dad, the Falcons didn't make it. And his response, who gives a shit about the Falcons? So yeah, I was like, I do, but honestly, like, you know, I love watching the playoffs, but no investment unless my team is in it. So I don't really care.
I hear you. All right, man. All right. Fair enough. I think the Cowboys are going to get it done. I think Brady's old, but at the same time, primetime playoff Brady is a legitimate thing. And Cowboys minus 2.5 is trending on Twitter, which you guys know I tend to fade those trending bets. I'm not doing it tonight. I'm not touching it. My brain, my eyes, and everything tells me Cowboys win. But everything else is lining up to tell me that they're going to drop the ball and Brady's going to pull it off. So I'm just going to sit this one out, everybody. All right. Good luck if your team is still in the playoffs, because mine certainly is not. Next up, we've got Gilbert Dorino Burns. Burns train, baby. Choo choo, motherfucker. Taking on Neil Magny. I love this fight. I can't wait to see this one. Gilbert Burns has been gone entirely too long from my liking. You guys know I'm a massive fan of Gilbert freaking Burns. The problem is he's taken on Neil Magny, who's been one of my money trains. I mean, I have gone to war with Neil Magny more times than I can count, man. And he just pays the bills more often than not. It seems like this guy comes through for me time and time again. I did not bet him against Shavkat Rakhmonov. I just want to be, on record saying I dodged that bullet there. Gilbert Burns has everything you'd want from a fighter moving up to 170 after, killing himself to stick around at 155. He's a little small, but he's fucking fast. He's got those big, heavy bombs, overhand rights, strong wrestling, BJJ black belt. He's another guy that can tie people into pretzels. Neil Magny, tall, lanky, the exact opposite, right? He's skinny, skyscraper type hitter, but he fights close with everybody. Neil Magny's one of those guys where, he's 35 years old. If he had the level of skill he's had, the last couple of years at like 29, you'd be like, ooh, like this guy might touch gold one of these days, but he's firmly found himself in the gatekeeper role the last couple of years, and he falls just short when he faces that contender level competitor. And that's why the line is where it's at here in this spot, in my opinion. There are some questions, if we're being fair, about Gilbert Burns' durability. He's not reacted well to a couple of shots he's taken recently. And, Usman put him out on his freaking shield in that fight, but he just went all 15 with a guy like Hamzat, showing that he's still absolutely got it. He's still here, piss and vinegar. He's going to fight for your money every single time. Problem is that price tag, Dan. Problem is that price tag. Minus 400 for Gilbert Burns. I think he's got all the tools necessary to beat a guy like Neil Magny, but Magny finds a way to slow down the time. He pins you up against the fence. He takes that wind out of your sails and makes that fight seem super long and super grueling. And if he can just kind of out physical a guy like Gilbert Burns, then that method of victory is going to absolutely be on the table. But we are in Brazil, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was a little bit of home cooking. If this is a close fight, I guarantee you Gilbert Burns is getting his hand raised. And frankly, Dan, the judges just don't like the cage control anymore. If it's a close fight and you're the one pinning your opponent up against the cage, Ketlen Vieira this past weekend, I thought she won 29-28. They gave it to Rocky because she was the one throwing, knees in the clinch and punches to the body instead of holding her opponent there. I think whether it's by hook or crook or just blowing through his opponent on the ground, it's going to be Gilbert Burns on Saturday that gets his hand raised. And frankly, I think he can go the route that Shavkat did. I wouldn't be surprised if he chokes him out.
Yeah, what's funny about me and Magny is that, like, okay, so prior to, from like 2015 to 2018, I was calling these Magny fights on point. Max bet Santiago to beat Magny, bet on Magny against Johnny Hendricks, bet on him against Hector Lombard, even fucking bet on him against Kichi Kunimoto back in the day. But after the fucking face planning that Santiago put on him, I just cannot predict a fucking Neil Magny fight to save my life. Lost on Li Jingliang, lost on Rocco Martin, lost on Robbie Lawler, lost on D-Rod, and they all have similar themes for whatever reason. Like when you think of Robbie Lawler, when you think of D-Rod, when you think of Lee the Leech, you think of guys that are going to come out here and try to knock your head off or at least box you up. And all these guys, for some reason, I don't know if it's the range of Neil Magny, when they get in there with him, they start trying to clinch with him. They start trying to grapple with him, and then they all gas out right away.
They volunteer to fight his fight every time.
It's crazy. Like I just don't understand it. But the thing with Burns, so if Burns clinches with him but can't take him down, Burns is going to gas out too, and then Neil Magny can, weasel this one away. But if Burns can get this guy down to the ground, like my boy, who said it in Scarface? Pobrecito, you know what I'm saying? Like poor man if he gets taken down to the ground against Gilbert Dorino Burns, man, because You said hook or crook. I say tap or snap. Or I say tap or nap. Whatever it takes, man. If Gilbert Burns gets on top of Neil Magny, the fight might be over shortly after. And let's not discount the fact that calf kicks have always been a big weapon to use against Magny. And let's not act like his chin is exactly, who's someone with an amazing chin? I'm blanking out right now. Like, who's someone that just takes ridiculous amounts of shots and keeps walking forward? Like, I know
Drew Dober is the one we touched on earlier in the evening.
Neil Magny, even though they're training together, Neil Magny does not have a Drew Dober chin. So I'm telling you right now, like, Cheeto Vera, that's a very good example.
Cheeto Vera's a good call.
Cheeto Vera is a fantastic call. The Lorenz Larkin fight, that's exactly what I'm talking about, man. Like, the blueprint is out there on how to beat Magny. It's just for whatever reason, these guys fall into his bullshit. And I say his bullshit with all due respect. It's just like, for some reason, they keep playing his game. If Gilbert cannot take him down or compromise him with calf kicks or badly hurt him with big shots, and this becomes a clinch fest, Neil's going to win that fight. But if Burns, who said making love to the mic? Was that my boy Brandon Olivas?
That's Hans Grat in the chat here.
Is that Olivas's burner?
That's a great question. Olivas has got like 10 of them, so maybe.
Because he said that on his last podcast, and I actually thought that was really funny. He's like, my bald friend that makes love to his microphone. I was like, I like this kid. He's got a good sense of humor. I like him. But,
I can't keep up with Olivas though. I mean, like, if it's his burner, I would expect it to be something about, white women or something like that. I mean, he changes his profile picture every other week, and I always got to remind myself that it's the same guy.
The only thing is that those are the exact words he said on his show. So either way, so if not, then this kid watched his show. So either way, I thought it was funny. I like the kid.
Take it, man. That's a good one. You just keep that one regardless of who's saying it.
Exactly. It's good. But back to this, man. I mean, if I say we as if I'm part of the team, if you can calf kick him, chop him down, if you can hit him upstairs and compromise him, if you can get him down on the ground, I think it's smooth sailing for Gil Burns. But if for whatever reason Magny can keep this fight standing, minimize the damage, turn this into one of these dirty clinch fights, Burns has gassed out in the past. So let's not act like, Neil can't win this fight. And we have to talk in these terms when we're talking about a minus 450 or whatever the odds are. We have to talk in these terms and bring up all these possible scenarios. But at the end of the day, my man, I think Gilbert Burns is going to take this man down, and the fight is going to be over shortly after. So I'm going to go with Gilbert Burns via submission, even though the knockout's in play too. But I'm going to go Burns by submission. I love me some jiu-jitsu, especially in Brazil.
Awesome. No, I'm right there with you, man. I think it's going to be Gilbert Burns. I think it's going to be Gilbert Burns by sub. And I mean, you look back, the fight with Hamzat, that was a barn burner for 15 straight minutes. I'm not questioning Burns' gas tank right now after that kind of a war. You go back to the Thompson fight, landed 3 takedowns on Wonderboy, did exactly what he had to do, laid on top of him. I think if you can get 3 on Wonderboy, you can probably get 1 on Magny. And then you go back to the Usman fight. Yeah, it ended poorly, but before Usman got head kicked, Burns was the closest guy to knocking him out. He had Usman hurt badly at the beginning of that fight. Like, Burns is a motherfucker, dude. I think he wins this fight. Now, I've said it time and time again, Magny's been one of my favorite fighters to bet for a long time. He makes fights close. So if you parlay Gilbert Burns at this price tag, you could be puckering your butthole come Saturday night because the judges might need to bail you out on this one. But at the end of the day, I'm sticking with it. I'm picking Gilbert Burns. Like I said, picking the sub, hook or crook. I think Gilbert gets his hand raised on Saturday, but I am expecting a finish. Here we go, everybody. It's time. Co-main event. We've got Davison, the God of War Figueiredo, fighting on home turf versus arch nemesis Brandon Moreno. And we got a pick 'em price tag. This thing could go either way. We've seen this fight multiple times, Dan, and I know you think the same way I do. I said if they run this fight back twice a year from now on, put these guys in their own weight class, don't bother having them fight anybody else, I'll watch it every time. They're so evenly matched. The fights are so entertaining. It's so back and forth. I love watching these guys duke it out, and they've now shared the octagon for like a freaking hour and a half together. But the one thing that jumps off the page to me is Brandon Moreno is the only one to ever finish this fight. Now, it was a quick turnaround. There were some circumstances, leading up to that fight, but we have got a draw, a win by finish, and a decision. We've got Brandon Moreno, who is younger than his opponent by 6 years. Deiveson Figueiredo, a 35-year-old. We know that weight cut is tough. We know it doesn't get any easier on him. I think this is finally the time where the miles add up. And I think this is finally the time where Brandon Moreno gets his hand raised and puts his stamp on this trilogy, man. His boxing is just so slick. He's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage. I say gonna like he hasn't had it before. He's had the 2-inch reach advantage every time they've fought. And I know we got to talk about like the whole Krause situation. Dan, did you watch the UFC Countdown episode for this week?
Yeah, he's training with Saif Saud.
Yes. So I was going to get there, but at the UFC Countdown, they talked about each fight that they've gone through, and they're like, his last fight, he was training at the UFC PI. They didn't say shit about Glory MMA or James Krause. They're like, he trained at the UFC PI for the last fight. I found that a little humorous. They're just kind of clean scrubbing James Krause out of the picture there. I think, honestly, man, it's an upgrade. Moving over to train with Coach Saif Saud is probably an upgrade from James Krause. I know Brandon Moreno was happy. I was a Glory MMA supporter myself. I really loved the growing stable of fighters that they had over there before everything went down the way that it did. But I think this is probably a good move for Brandon Moreno. And they've fought this guy now enough times. And the same is true, obviously, on the Deiveson Figueiredo side. I haven't seen anything about Figueiredo at Fight Ready this camp, Dan. Have you?
No, actually, interestingly enough. So the last fight, the one that Deiveson won, in my opinion, he won the first fight. But the third fight, the one he officially won, he not only did he do that at Fight Ready. So it's not just Fight Ready. So Fight Ready is a great camp. But there's their strength and conditioning program, Neuroforce One. Not all of the fighters do it because it's very expensive. But you know, when you have Henry Cejudo, remember when Henry Cejudo was at Neuroforce One? And like when I heard when Deiveson was at Neuroforce One, he was breaking like all their records. And what's interesting about that is like the Neuroforce One guys, like they break this down to a science. Like they know the intricate details of things that I wouldn't even know the half of. And like, and Deiveson was out there breaking all those records. So yeah, on one hand, I'm like, fuck, he's not training there anymore. But on the other hand, him training in Brazil, this fight being in Brazil, he's acclimatized already. But what I've been seeing on his Instagram, not that that's the be all end all, this guy is in amazing shape for this fight. He's still doing his strength and conditioning. He's just not doing the Neuroforce One strength and conditioning. And interesting enough, this week, a thing came out and someone tweeted, you know, Deiveson Figueiredo is 8 pounds away from making weight. And all these people that don't know shit about anything were saying like, oh my God, he's got 8 pounds to lose. Deiveson's going to miss weight. It's like, guys, 8 pounds on Monday is perfect.
That's
like,
on point.
That's where you want. Like, I know dudes that are 15 to 20 pounds away from the weight on Monday of fight week. So the fact that Deiveson is 8 pounds away, this dude is making weight. So I ain't worried about that. The thing about it though, man, is that you mentioned Deiveson being 35 years old, right? And if we were talking about heavyweight, I don't give a fuck if you're 40, man. I mean, I've seen dudes go out there at heavyweight, 39, 40, 41, go out there and win a belt. Flyweight, bantamweight, featherweight, that's when you're 35, you know, you're either right at your peak or it's about to start to go downhill. Now, I'm not ready to say that he's about to go downhill yet because he looked fantastic in that last fight. And honestly, besides their second fight, the first and the third were like very competitive. Not first and third rounds, first and third fights, right? Were very, very competitive fights. I thought Deiveson won the first one 4-1. I thought Brandon steamrolled him in the second fight. And then I thought the third one was a close fight. So go into these odds, right? It's like minus 110 a piece, right? Something like that.
Minus 110 a piece as of right now. Briefly fluctuated Deiveson, the favorite. Brandon Moreno touched plus money and then came back down.
So Clint, we have over an hour sample size of footage of these guys fighting, and every single time has been completely different. So what that tells me is that last fight, I took Davison at, I forgot, plus 150, plus 160, something like that, because same reasoning. The first fight and the second fight were drastically different. Give me this plus 160. Hey, let's roll the dice and see what happens. But now another fight, I have zero fucking clue what's going to happen. So I don't feel like I have an edge at minus 110 on either side because I don't know what's going to happen. But you give me good dog odds on either side, and I'll take it. Unless you have a strong feeling going into this that one particular side, that it's not going to be this close fight, and one particular side is going to dominate, well, then there is value at these pick'em odds. The thing is, I don't know what the hell is going to happen because I've watched these guys fight for over an hour, and it's all been drastically different. So to me, pick'em feels fine. I'll pick Davison, but am I going to sit here and act surprised if someone on the caliber of Brandon Moreno, who's already beat Davison before, beats him again? No, I'm not going to be surprised. But in case it's really a 50-50 fight, judges in Brazil might favor their guy. I'll go with Davison, but this prediction that I'm giving you doesn't mean shit. There could be a finish. There could be a domination. It could be a close split 50-50 fight. Like, I really do not know what's going to happen based on the sole fact what I just said. We've seen over an hour of these guys in the octagon, and every single time has been drastically different. So I don't know what to expect. I just know these are the two best flyweights on planet Earth, and may the best man win. And I cannot wait to see Pantoja and Manel Cap get in the mix.
That's going to be fun. This division is so freaking fun. But I just want everybody to listen to the numbers real quick from these fights, because when Dan says every single fight's been different, he's not kidding. So what you've got in the first fight is Brandon Moreno landing 4 takedowns and 132 significant strikes. Davison edges him with 137 significant strikes and 2 takedowns of his own. That was the majority draw that we got. And then you run it back. You've got the round 2 sub by Brandon Moreno. Again, there were some circumstances. That was a real bad weight cut for Davison. I believe he missed weight on that fight. Wasn't he ineligible to win the belt that night or something like that?
No. That was against Joseph Benavidez.
Okay. But either way, that was one of those ones where he looked awful. He looked terrible, worse than usual. And the quick turnaround with the way that he cuts weight, like, you just knew he wasn't going to be himself coming into that fight. But we got the finish from Brandon Moreno. And then the third fight, you've got Brandon Moreno landing 105 significant strikes with 1 takedown. Davison only landed 86 significant strikes, landed 2 takedowns. But the kicker here is 3 knockdowns that night, Dan. Like, he did the classic stealing rounds by knocking his opponent down. He had far less volume, but he was far more effective with his strikes that night, and that's what made the fight close. These guys have tweaked their game plans for each other every single time they've fought. And what I've done, Dan, is I have zigzagged. So far, I've zigzagged pretty fucking well. I made bank the night Brandon Moreno won that belt. I had him by sub. I had him on the round 3 sprinkle. I had the under that night. Because of the way the first fight went, I felt like these guys were going to come out and try and put their stamp on it. I think the same this time around. Because they've now fought twice to very close competitive fights, Brandon Moreno feels like he was wrongly put on that decision the last time out, should have still gotten his belt. There's going to be some intentions this fight. These guys want to put an end to this quadrilogy, I guess we got to call it now, because it's the 4th time they've run it back. I'm going to take the under. We've seen both these guys are more than capable of finishing their opponents. Brandon Moreno is tough as nails, but most people don't survive getting dropped 3 times by Davison Figueiredo. Slight adjustment, I think Davison can knock him out. Brandon Moreno, we've seen the boxing improvements from him. He hurt Davison Figueiredo multiple times throughout these fights. Hasn't quite been able to punctuate it, but we talked about the tough weight cuts. We talked about the age. We've talked about how these guys slow down and break down over time. That knockout could be coming, and the submission is always there. We've seen him do it before. I think he can do it again. I think Brandon Moreno is going to win this thing, being the younger, fresher fighter. The fact that Davison Figueiredo is not training at Fight Ready with Neuroforce 1, I actually think is a big deal. Some people may not agree with me, but I think that it's a slight step down what he's doing compared to what he was, even though he'll be at home the whole time, no travel, no flight, all that kind of stuff. You got to wonder if his performance is impacted ever so slightly the night of the fight. And then Brandon Moreno just has that youth advantage. I think his level or his ability to improve, I think, still lasts a little bit longer than Davison Figueiredo's does. So I think Moreno wins the belt on Saturday. And frankly, I think it's another finish, no matter who it comes from. I think if they give me another 4.5, I'm going to bet the under, Dan.
Best of luck. Hey, under 4.5 at dog money have a great hit rate, by the way.
That's true. Let me just look again. We don't have odds here, on shore right now, but let me see what they're looking like at the openers, because I'd be very, very interested in what's going on here. I do wish I had snagged plus money on my guy Brandon Moreno. That would have been the move. I definitely should have been a little quicker on the trigger finger and gotten him when he poked up there. For some reason, best fight odds is being stupid and not giving me what I want here. Brandon Moreno. There we go. Found it. What we've got is a total set at 4.5. The under happens to be at plus 120 right now, under 4.5. So yeah, I think that's the move, folks. I'm probably going to be betting violence on this one on Saturday. And Dan, I got to tell you, I can count on one hand the number of times the sport of mixed martial arts and the UFC have moved me to tears. And Brandon Moreno getting that belt wrapped around him and listening to his voice break when he screams "Viva la Mexico," I can't handle it. This kid is one of my all-time favorites. I loved him in The Ultimate Fighter. I love his attitude, the way he's always smiling and happy. And then he's a complete savage once the cage door closes. But then he does everything he can to preach positivity and pick people up and tell people how good they are and stays out of beef. I love the guy. I'm such a fan of his. I was heartbroken when the UFC cut him. And for him to come back, build his way all the way back up to being the freaking champion of the weight class, like that moment is just an all-timer for me. So I want him with all my soul to get the belt back this week. So now everybody listening, you may scream that I'm biased in this spot, and maybe I am a little bit, but I will say that this is a series that I've bet very successfully so far in this quadrilogy. So I'm picking Brandon Moreno to take the whole thing home on Saturday. All right, everybody. It is main event time. My guy Dan's been hanging out with me for a good 2 hours. I'm sure you're all sick of hearing me talk at this point. I'm just kidding. That's what you signed up for.
I love you.
You're here because you love me. Ball gang, baby. Let's go. Main event time. We've got Glover Teixeira, the man himself, taking on Jamahal Sweet Dreams Hill, my favorite, your favorite, our favorite, the man that we both called putting gold around his waist coming off the Contender Series. There's a reason that Dan and I do shows together every time Jamahal Hill fights. We both have said this man is destined to be champion for a long time. Everyone in this chat knows my opinion on the matter. And I'm going to let you lead, man. Why don't you break this down for us? Talk to us about this fight, the matchup, and how you're attacking it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, guys. A lot of y'all know how I feel about this. I mean, I think like maybe 2-3 years ago, I said that this guy was going to fight for a title. So it's cool when you're able to scout that talent and just watch their rise and see them go there, and he's been one of my absolute money trains. I remember a couple years back, Robert Whitaker was my money train, like cashing a plus 205 against Jacare Souza, which at the time people were giving me shit for, which now sounds kind of funny. Imagine Robert Whitaker being plus 200 against Jacare nowadays, right? Max Holloway, I max bet him at dog odds in Brazil to take the belt from Jose Aldo. So like I've had my money trains, and those are my money trains of the past. My money trains of the present there's 3 guys: Jamahal Hill, Bilal Muhammad, and Chito Vera. And the thing is, I keep getting great odds on those guys every single time. It's not like I'm out here about to lay minus 300 on Jamahal. I'm getting pick 'em odds, and I'd take him at pick 'em against anybody at light heavyweight. Now, let me explain why. So firstly, when you have a guy, and we were talking about this earlier, where when John Jones left the division, that was right before the guys that can match him on physicality came into the picture. And that was, it was a shame because I was sick of watching Jones. I mean, I wasn't sick of watching it, but it was kind of like we knew what was going to happen in these Jones fights where, Rampage, Machida, Shogun, all these guys are such legends, but like the physical differences. Vitor, like the difference in physicality, like Jones would have like 10-inch reach advantages over these guys. He'd have like 5-inch height advantages. Whereas now these guys coming up, they are 6'4", they are 6'5", they do have the 80-inch reaches. So it's beautiful. What I love about Jamahal Hill is that, I mean, he's got that Francis Ngannou one-hitter quitter. I mean, ask Johnny Walker, ask Jimmy Crute, ask Ovin, ask like a bunch of these guys. Like, he's got that one-hitter quitter, but he's also got the output of a little guy. Like, when's the last time you saw a guy like him in a 3-round fight, a 205 or in a 3-round fight, go out there, land over 100 significant strikes like he did in his debut? And then the big talking point is, well, in his debut and in his most recent fight, he gave up 6 takedowns. But guess what? He got back up 6 times. So to me, like, it'd be one thing if he gave up 6 takedowns and then he was held down for prolonged periods, you know, at a time, can't get back up, you know, is a fish out of water off his back, then it's like, fuck. But to me, I mean, what made Jose Aldo so great, one of the many things that made Jose Aldo so great, when dudes would take him down, you'd pop back up. Jamahal Hill, same thing. You take him down, he's popping right back up. And here with Glover Teixeira, I mean, Glover is such an inspiration. Glover, someone I've just an insane, infinite amount of respect for. The fact that he became a champion in his 40s, like, dude, like, I mean, I cannot say enough good things about Glover. And the fact that now he's got a chance to become a 2-time champ in his 40s, like, hey, like, you're a Hall of Famer, you're a legend, you're someone I look up to, and you saw him on the countdown, still disciplined, still hungry, wakes up in the morning, takes his ice bath, no matter how cold it is outside. Like, I love everything about Glover Teixeira. It's just that if you want to beat Jamahal Hill in a fight, you better put this dude out. Let me ask you something. What happened when Paul Craig put the triangle choke on Ankalaev?
He tapped quick.
He tapped. What happened when Paul Craig put the triangle choke on Kennedy?
He tapped.
What happened when Paul Craig put the triangle choke on Nikita Krylov?
Tapped.
What happened when Paul Craig put the triangle and the armbar on Jamahal?
He let the damn thing snap and then tried to hit him before the ref called the fight off.
Okay, so this guy is literally willing to let you break his arm. He's willing to let you choke him unconscious. Like, he has no quit in him. And that's a fundamental, that's what I need when I'm talking about a future champion. So if Glover's going to come out here and submit him, he better like actually put him out, break his limb, or do something like that. And I might be wrong. You know, you might clip this. Let's say Jamahal taps out and then be like, what are you talking about? Jamahal tap. But based on that Paul Craig fight, you got to kill this guy. I mean, Jamahal never tapped out. Jamahal let his arm break, and then he kept trying to fight with a broken arm. That is the heart of a world champion. Not to mention, let's talk about this Glover and Yuri fight. Amazing fight. Fight of the year. One of the best fights I've ever seen in my life. But what belt in jiu-jitsu is Yuri Prohaska?
I don't know if he even has a belt, man.
All right, let's just say blue belt. All right. I don't want to disrespect him and say white belt. Let's say blue belt. So this blue belt Yuri, who's amazing, escaped a locked-in triangle, which, by the way, that escape he had was disgusting. Anytime he got full mounted, he was able to use the fence to push off, reverse position. And guess who submitted who in that fight? Yeah. I mean, going into it, in my breakdown, I was like, okay, there's one outcome we can write off. Like, Yuri's not going to submit Glover. Like, either Glover's going to submit him or ground and pound him, or Yuri's going to knock him out. Yuri survives every single bad spot from Glover and then goes out there and taps him out with a rear naked choke. And there was no resistance. It was a quick tap too. So
how many of us said that wasn't going to happen, Dan? How many of us sat behind the microphone and were like, there's one thing that's not going to happen?
I said it, and I said it with Brett Apley on my show, and Brett was like, you never know. And he was right. You never fucking know, man. So, you know, and let's not forget also, what's one common theme in most of Glover's recent fights? Does he not get dropped or rocked badly in all these fights, and then he comes back to take the fight out of these guys? You know who's one guy you probably don't want to get dropped by and expect to come back? You know who's one guy you do not want to get hit clean by and expect to make a comeback against? Jamahal Hill. Not to mention, if you're making that comeback, it's not like there's a heart issue. Like, Jamahal is willing to dig deep. He's really willing to go to the bitter end. So, not to mention, my boy Glover, as much as I love him, he's 43. If he really becomes a two-time champ and won both those belts in his 40s, I mean, like, dude, you just can't show enough respect to him. But oh shit, my camera ran out of battery. Hey, why don't you finish this out while I plug in my backup, okay?
Sounds like a plan, Dan.
And then I'll give the rest of my analysis after that.
Man, we yeah, I mean, Dan is just laying out the red carpet. I know it's way more fun on these podcasts when people disagree on picks and disagree on fights, but Jamahal Hill is everything Dan said and then some. I mean, the fact that he is willing to go out there and die that way, the speed is the main factor for me. It's the hand speed of Jamahal Hill. Glover is a guy that I have made a lot of money backing. Guys, Glover's been an absolute money train. You know, one of my rules, we don't bet on fighters that are 40 years old or older. We fade those fighters. Glover is the exception to that rule. And Glover's a guy that we've gone to many, many times because he is somehow the exception to that rule. Very special fighter. But at a certain point, like, it's got to come to an end. He can't keep doing what he does. And the chin issue is a big concern. If there's one guy that's faster, if there's one guy that's quicker than Jiri, it's Jamahal Hill. If Jamahal can get himself up off the ground, this fight is as good as wrapped, in my opinion. I love Jamahal Hill. I love that we're getting a decent price tag on him. This has been a spot that I've been looking forward to for a long time. So yeah, I'm going to be in on Jamahal Hill on Saturday. I think he's the champion, and I cannot wait for him to run it against some of these top competitors here at 205, because I wouldn't be surprised one bit if Jamahal Hill holds on to that belt for a while, because he's just a monster with his combination of skills. And on top of that, I don't think Dan mentioned he's a BJJ brown belt. Jamahal Hill got promoted to brown belt just recently. He brought in Anthony Smith, my doppelganger, to work on his submission, grappling, and defense leading up to this fight. So he's going to be ready to go. He's going to be on point. And I mean, I'm sorry, like I've said it before, this is the perfect time to bring it back around. I talked to Dan about the number of times I've been brought to tears watching mixed martial arts. Watching Glover get the belt wrapped around his waist was one of the times that I cried watching MMA. It was such a good story. It was such a feel-good moment for this man to have been delayed in his UFC edition because of visa issues, coming over outside the prime of his career when it wasn't looking as good for him to beat some of these top tier 205ers, to fall just short during the John Jones era and not get that belt. I never thought he'd do it. I never thought Glover would touch gold. For him to get gold wrapped around his waist was the best feel-good moment you could ever call in UFC history, and it moved me. It really did. There's no happy endings in MMA, folks. There's no such thing as a happy ending in MMA. This is the hurt business. And at the end of the day, I think that happy train ends here. Glover's going to put up a damn good fight, but this is a changing of the guard moment. It's Jamahal Hill's time, and new on Saturday, Jamahal Hill is going to be your UFC 205-pound champion.
Hey, sorry, I'm on my phone now because my camera died. But anyways, back to what I was saying, that like, I love the output, man. I mean, just nonstop. And it's not just like spamming bullshit, right? Like, he's out here setting up his jab. He's cutting angles. He's going to the body. He's going upstairs. He's mixing things up. Beautiful step through knees. Knows how to use his length. And Glover gets rocked in a lot of these fights, but he's able to come back. It's just that, you know, coming back against Carl Roberson, who isn't exactly the toughest, is one thing compared to coming back against this kid who you can break his arm and he's going to try to punch you with that broken arm. So I understand people's love for Glover, and I understand that, you know, sometimes when you haven't seen these up and comers, you know, fight maybe that level of competition, you have your hesitancy, especially with the regard that you hold Glover in. But you got to remember that, every champion was once a contender, and every contender was once a prospect, and now it's about rising to the occasion. So I'm going to play Jamahal Hill to win 2 units in this spot. And again, take my bias aside. Like, if he was minus 300, I wouldn't bet him here, but I'd literally bet Jamahal Hill at Pick'em against anybody on the 205-pound roster. So that's just the bottom line. I think he's got the mindset necessary to complete this task. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is, and I think it's going to be new. So I'm really excited about this. And if Glover wins, hey, all respect, dude. Like I said, I'm 33 years old. I'm 33 years old, right? Glover is 43. If Glover wins a belt at 43, that's just inspiring that 10 years from now I can achieve great things, right? And not to mention, he won his first belt in his 40s as well. So to win a second belt in your 40s, like, dude, that'd be amazing. But I think I've thought for like the last few years, Jamal's that guy. So why would I backtrack now? That's it. So yeah.
And we're getting a good price, Dan. We're getting a good price. It's not like we're having to lay minus 150, minus 175. We got damn near pick 'em price tag on it. There's nothing to complain about there.
Yeah. I mean, bottom line. So, I think that this is going to be an honorable send-off for the legend Glover, a guy who, he fought John Jones for the belt like damn near 10 years ago, and to make it back to the belt. And not only that,
John Jones' last fight.
He's
been so damn long.
He's overcome adversity. I mean, like, you remember the Gustafsson fight, you remember the Rumble fight, to overcome all that and to make it to a belt. Like, it's like one of those things, like I was talking about, like where, a guy like Bisping, like, he had overcome all that bullshit that he had gone through his entire career. He just simply wasn't going to be denied on the night when he fought Rockhold the second time, right? For the belt at UFC 199. Glover already had his moment where he just wasn't going to be denied against Jan Blachowicz. The magical moment already happened. Like, it's going to happen again. If it happens again, he's already a Hall of Famer in my book, but for it to happen again, like, that would just be the kind of history that I don't know. So take all the emotional bullshit aside, the stuff I'm talking about, the sentimental value I have, towards Glover, and I just think the output difference is huge. I think the length is going to be a big factor here. The variety of strikes, not to mention, if Jamal gets taken down, I think he's going to get back up. And let's say, worst case scenario, he gets full mounted. You're really going to have to finish this guy, not finish to where he says no mas like these other guys, like finish as in out cold, finish as in break his limb, finish as in there's no question that he can't continue type stuff, because if you break his limb, he's going to try to punch you with that broken limb. Like, that's the kind of guy he is. So, and the fact that he's willing to go to Brazil of all places to take his belt, I think it speaks volumes, because, a lot of other guys would have been like, yeah, I'll fight him, but it's got to be a neutral territory or this or that. This dude doesn't give a fuck. He'll go to Brazil to fight Glover. So I love both these guys, and sweet dreams.
I love it. All right, folks, there you have it. We have gone way over the mark this week. It's a big card, so thank you for sticking with us. We got 2 hours and 17 minutes worth of podcast here. We'll definitely be time stamping this bad boy for people who want to run it back a little bit later in the week. Thank you all so much for sticking with us and having a good time talking about our favorite sport in the world. Everybody, this is Dan from Half the Battle, my guy. Make sure you show him some love and support. Dan, please tell the people where they can find you and what you got going on this week.
Well, firstly, I'm grateful to be on here talking fights with you. Always a good time. And then for everyone in the chat, whether we agree, whether we disagree, I think one thing that we have in common is our passion for the sport. And, it's okay to be you don't have to be on the same side as everybody. You can think for yourself, but just be respectful, towards, if people are treating you with respect, reciprocate it. So that's all I think. And if you guys are interested in checking me out, I'm on Twitter at Best Fight Picks. And then I have a show called Half the Battle, available everywhere podcasts are found. So just check me out at Half the Battle. And I love talking fights. I love interacting with you guys. And I'm just grateful for these positive times, and let's keep it rolling.
All right, Dan, on that, I just have one last question to ask you before we wrap this bad boy up. Does a straw have one hole or two?
One more time.
Does a straw have one hole or two?
A straw that I drink out of?
Yeah. Does it have one hole or two?
One.
It's like a chicken or the egg, man. I'm not sure what the right answer is. Everybody, thank you so much for hanging out and watching the Die Hard MMA podcast. Hit the like button on your way out. Kick some ass. Go have a great week. Good luck to everybody, especially if you bet the Cowboys tonight. Looks like they're up by 6. So kick some ass. We will see you guys later in the week. Of course, keep it plugged in right here to Pub Sports Radio. We've got free challenges, contests, free betting content coming to you on a daily basis. I'll be back with the Total Takedown, the Undefeated Post Weigh-In Show, and then we're going to be doing shots of Fireball on Saturday for UFC Vegas 283. Dan, my man.
One more thing. I'll announce this now.
Oh.
So I was gonna, So I teased a little something on Twitter earlier. I said I might have something cool happening Sunday. I guess I can go ahead and announce it now. So I've been teasing that I was going to do a Twitter space for a very, very long time, right? But you got a lot of guys doing the exact same thing, basically doing fight breakdowns like we do. They just do it on Twitter spaces. So I'm going to do something. I'm going to do something a little bit different. I think the flyweight division is one of the most underlooked yet talent stacked, and just they're some of the most technical fighters in the UFC, and I feel like they don't get the respect they deserve. So what I'm going to do on Sunday is I'm going to do a Twitter space. I'm going to be joined by a couple of UFC flyweights. I'm going to be joined by Tim Elliott. I'm going to be joined by Cody Durden. I'm going to be joined by O'Day Osborne,
Nice.
Nate Manis. Hopefully we can get Mokaev in there. Like, people are gonna be like, wait, Mokaev and Durden, they're actually friends, so it's all good. So we're gonna try to just get a bunch of flyweights in there. We're gonna try to, they understand that, like, they want to bring excitement to this division and they want to get eyes on it. So we're gonna get some of the guys talking shit to each other. We're gonna try to, set up fights between the guys, and then at the end we're gonna get the fans involved and let y'all ask these fighters anything you want. Just don't fucking ask Tim Elliott about James Krause. Like, don't be a dick. You know what I'm saying? Or don't be
respectful.
Don't ask like, so, oh, how did it feel like to get knocked out? Don't do any bullshit like that. But if you got some legit questions for these exciting flyweight fighters, I'm happy to bridge the gap and just get the fans interacting with the fighters. So it's going to be Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And what's great about that is the day before is the flyweight title fight between Brandon and Davison. So I'm going to have a couple exciting flyweights with me on Spaces Sunday at 7 Eastern. Y'all can join and ask them anything you want, and we're all going to hang out and have a good time. So Clint, thank you again. Thank you to your audience, and I'm truly grateful, and let's have a great week.
Love it. Breaking news right here on the show. Thank you, Dan. Good luck with that. I'll definitely do my best to tune in and be a part of that. That sounds like a good time. And hey, he said it, man. Thank you all to you guys, listeners, viewers, everybody. You guys know the deal. I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you guys. We've got the absolute best chat and support system and community here, in my opinion, on gambling spaces. I'm going to call it spaces because we're not Twitter, we're on YouTube, but you guys know what I'm saying. We do a good job of supporting each other, lifting each other up, and being very, very kind, especially when we disagree on things, which I know Dan is a big fan of. So thank you guys for doing what you do. Keep supporting us. We'll keep bringing the content. Let's put some money in our pockets on Saturday. I can't wait for this fight card. Good luck, everybody. Let's roll.